Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Welcome, one and all, to the Dukes of Gaming podcast. Thank you for choosing to hang with us for the next hour and some change as we bring you into our world of video games. You can find us on your favorite podcast service, watch us live on Twitch, and watch us later on YouTube, whatever floats your gaming boat. And as always, I have the pleasure of being joined by my fellow Dukes of Gaming. But first, I'm also being joined by a new family member who's been sitting on my lap this whole time.
Oh.
Mascot.
Oh.
He's so cute.
Dog of gaming.
What's
Yes.
his name?
Yes, yes, he is our initials incarnated. Yes, his name is
You named your Duke?
No,
Oh my
he already
God.
had it. So he came about. He was in a different situation, and he got into me from a favor, and so I'm his owner now. And
Heck
yeah, his name is
yeah.
Ace. He already has a name, so I didn't
Ooh.
want to rename him.
Great name.
Nice.
Didn't
I have
wanna
a dog named
confuse him.
Ace too. A great
Oh,
name.
cool. Yeah, so he's a good boy. He's been, he's house trained, potty trained. So he's been really good so far. He's been a bright spot of the weekend. So I just wanted to make sure I introduced him. He says hi. I know he can't say anything right now, but
And you
How
just
old
got
is
him on
he?
Friday, right? So you're a
Just-
dad of 2 days now.
I
Joining
know.
all the dads.
I know. And he likes sleeping on the bed, so we had to get him some stairs. We got some doggy stairs for him so he can sleep at the edge of the bed. So he's a good boy. He likes barking whenever the door is open. That's the
Of
only
course.
thing. But besides that, he's been
Good
great.
Yeah.
You can get off my lap now.
Congratulations.
Go to
Can't
your
wait
bed.
for many more guest appearances.
He'll find his way on here. I assure you. I know he will. But yeah, that's my introduction. I know a little long, but I also want to introduce my fellow Dukes of Gaming. Joining me first and foremost, he's a Nintendo hater that plays his games on hard mode. He is the Duke of Education, Alfredo. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. I do have to ask. I noticed, Cole, is that a shuffleboard in your background?
It is, yeah.
I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous.
It is. I love shuffleboard. We've stayed at a mountain cabin and they have one, and we played the whole weekend. So it's really a cool game. It's a chill game. It's kind of like cornhole, but I mean, I'm sure I don't know if you other guys have played. It's really you find them in bars sometimes.
Yeah, only in a bar.
I definitely played. I played a lot of
In Cole's
cornhole.
house.
There's a lot of cornhole at the bars in Baltimore and DC. I never played shuffleboard though.
Yeah.
It's
cool.
great. It's
Really
great.
have
Relaxing
to.
game.
I'm getting pretty jealous, so you might see me with a shuffleboard after I clean up. Kind of cluttered in here, but I'll find room.
And of course, second foremost, who has a shuffleboard in his background, he is the law expert, headband expert, business expert, but more importantly, he is the Duke of Rocket League. Cole, how are you doing this weekend, sir?
Good. Remember, I told you we might have to revoke that title because I'm not holding it down.
All right, Duke of to be
I'm good,
determined.
though.
How about that?
Yeah.
We will see when you get that back. But before you get that back, I do have to introduce third foremost, West Coast represents. He is Cloud Chamber certified and the
That's right.
tallest Duke by a
That's
wide
right.
margin. He is the Duke of Design. Ben, how are you doing, sir? I know you're feeling a little under the weather. Glad you're here with us
I
today.
got, just trying to figure out what's going on here. Do I have a carrot allergy? Do I have a parsnip allergy? Something's going on.
Both.
This
Probably.
is strange in the neighborhood. But I got to do my disclaimer. I got to do this disclaimer now. I got to be on the ball. I do work at Cloud Chamber. I'm the senior narrative designer, but my opinions on this lovely show are my own. And I'm working on the 4th entry in the BioShock series, but don't ask me about it. If I told you anything, I would have to kiss you.
Oh.
And we don't want that. None of us want that.
He's a bad kisser. You heard it here first.
Well, he's not a bad gamer. And of course, we have to ask the age-old gaming question. What have we been playing this week? Who has the shortest amount? We'll start with them.
Probably me.
All right, go ahead.
God of War Ragnarok, but we'll get to that when Ben's turn. Goat Simulator 3, which has kind of like secretly been one of my most anticipated games since the summer, only because my kids like it so much. And like, so what they've done is they've created, if you played the old ones, they had little subset like towns. They have like a city, and then they had like they actually had like a little mini Goat Simulator MMO, and then they had a bay town. And it was really janky, but that was the charm of it. Whatever. It is what it is. My kids loved it, so we were excited about this one. This one has more of a Fortnite look to it. The graphics are a little bit more cartoony. They don't have that bland, like ugly look that the first Goat Simulator game had. So that's kind of nice. And they've tightened up the controls. The controls are pretty awesome. Y'all, there's a triple jump. The goat do like a Mario
triple jump the goat.
Triple jump.
Do you have to earn it like Metroidvania style, or does
No, but
all goats have triple
jump? You do have to earn some things. You can earn like I've only unlocked one, but like where you can run up the wall, you can do wall runs. But so there's the open world, and you can go about it and do. So me and my 2 kids can play at the same time, and we can all go on different missions. We just exist in this world together. I can be off doing a little mission over here, or they can be doing something over here, whatever. Then we can go on so there's mini quests. So I found a ring that went above my goat's head, like the Lord of the Rings ring. I found it in the Hobbit house. There's a little mini Hobbit house, and it just wants you to take it to the volcano, and you kind of have to figure it out. So me and the kids went on this big journey. We all got cars, and we all tried to find our way to the volcano. We get up there, and then you jump in, and just crazy thing happens. Like, it's so random, but it's awesome. It's like in true Goat Simulator, like it fits the tone, like the randomness kind of the first game had, but they take it to the next level where they have little quests, little steps. You unlock stuff all the time. They're finding hats and different shirts and stuff, which they get so excited for. It's really good. It's really good. I wouldn't recommend it for anybody else, but just for my situation, like playing with kids, it's awesome.
It definitely sounds like Fortnite's creative mode that you can just do whatever you want, and
it kind of is like that.
Special events, basically.
Yeah. So also you have when you unlock the floor is lava game, you can just anywhere on the map you can just start. You throw down a flag and you start floor is lava. You can be in the city and have the skyscrapers, and the lava just slowly rises like you would expect, and the last person standing wins. It's really fun. Which no game does that. No game has the floor is lava that's actually like a Goat Simulator is a pretty good platformer. Then one of my kids got eaten by a whale. He was just out swimming and he found a buoy and a whale ate him. And then so we're all trying to figure out how to get out of this whale's mouth. And it gives you no hints or anything. You just have to figure it out. So it was awesome seeing them try to problem solve, and their little minds just coming up with the most ridiculous stuff. But
was it the blowhole?
It was the tonsils. They had to punch the tonsils like 3 times.
Nice.
Anyway,
love it.
it's
I might have to try this game. Actually, it sounds like
To
a
me,
good
it
time.
sounds like a Game Pass game, and I
It
have a
does,
feeling.
yeah,
I have a
it is.
feeling we're gonna see like in, let's say, April or May of next year, like Goat Simulator 3 is coming to Xbox and Goat
Right.
Simulator 2.
You know,
And I feel like
surprisingly,
it would blow up because it has online co-op as well, right? Cool.
yeah, up to 4 players. Surprisingly, though, it's only next gen consoles, and it's not on the Switch. I would have thought they would put this thing out on as many consoles.
Well, Nintendo can't what's the word? They can't incentivize, goat on goat.
No, the first one's on there. The first Goat Simulator
Really?
on Switch, yeah.
They can do some Goat on Goat, but not all.
I
Goat.
guess so.
And
guess
that
so.
one's dicey. The first one has like has like the little satanic symbols in the woods and stuff. So my kids would find it, and I'd be like, "Oh gosh, let's turn this
Oh,
off."
right.
I feel like Nintendo is not really in the business. Like Nintendo is like for the Switch generation is not like Disney. Like like there's some questionable titles on the
Yeah.
eShop.
Yeah, they're getting in there.
There's a lot of hentai.
Sneaking their way.
I was
on.
about to say they have those
Oh.
waifus on there. Yeah.
Oh no.
They do. I see it. Never bought, but I see it in the section of the anime because I'm the
Never
Duke of
bought.
anime, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Never
It's
bought, but often
overwhelming.
regarded.
Right.
But yeah, my last comment on it is they took it to the next level. The map is huge, and there's different areas in the map, which is really cool. The exploration is really fun for them. It's literally Grand Theft Auto for kids, but with goats, because you can drive cars now. You can drive cars, different vehicles. So it's really great. It's really great for them. There's nothing like it for kids.
Are the controls good?
Yeah, it feels crisp. It feels good. The driving actually is surprisingly pretty solid.
Cool.
Nice.
Well, I'm looking
Mhm.
forward to it. GTG, Grand Theft Goat. Looking
Mhm.
forward to it. I think me and you, Alfredo, we both have 2 games, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I'll go next because I'm a little quick. Mine, we're also playing God of War, but we'll obviously talk about that in a bit. I've been playing Pokemon Alpha Sapphire, and I guess this is kind of lead into one of your games you're playing, Alfredo, which is Pokemon Scarlet. And I haven't tried Scarlet, so my opinion is basically, I don't have an opinion on the game itself, but I saw a lot of reviews for it, and any hesitation I had, because I said if it's gonna get like 85s and above, I'll probably end up caving and going to GameStop and picking it up. But as soon as I saw those reviews, I was like, you know what? I have a whole bunch of Pokemon games loaded on my Steam Deck. So I might as well just start one of these as opposed to paying $60 to play 25% of this game and then put it in the backlog. So I started playing Pokemon Alpha Sapphire, and I got a decent amount. I beat 2 gyms. And yeah, I forgot how much I love Pokemon Sapphire. It's the first Pokemon game I ever beat when I had to have been maybe like 9 or 10
I was
when it
gonna
came
say,
out.
what generation is that? Like,
I think
is
that's
that
the 3rd or 4th.
okay?
I think it might be 3rd. And yeah, I had that on Game Boy as one of my first Game Boy games. And yeah, I love Sapphire. So playing this remake of it, and for those of you who don't know, Pokemon Alpha is the remake of the GBA's Pokemon Sapphire, and it came out on the 3DS. And I'm playing on Steam Deck. Runs really well. And I have a better experience playing these 3DS games on a bigger screen. That was the one thing I hated about the 3DS. I hated the screen size itself. So playing these games have been a godsend because I wanted to play a lot of the games in that generation, but I didn't want to have to pull out the 3DS to do it. And yeah, it's been a great game. Pokemon, this is my favorite generation of Pokemon. So yeah, just having a good time with it. But I want to hear what you've been going through with Pokemon Scarlet. Like how you been working through it, how you like it so far.
Yeah, I got thoughts. So yeah, like Thomas was saying, I've been playing 2 games this week as well. So they're very different games actually. So the first game that I'll talk about is Pokemon Scarlet, and then I'll get a little bit into the newest Dark Pictures anthology game called The Devil in Me. So a little bit about Pokemon Scarlet. So I've been playing. I want to say I played about 6-ish hours, 5 or 6 hours total ish. And I was very hesitant about this game because, like you guys, I saw this game. I wasn't really excited for it, but I wanted to see how the reviews do, and they didn't do very well. I think it was even below Pokemon Arceus, which came out earlier this year.
I
And
think it's
most
the
people
lowest rated mainline Pokemon game ever.
Right. And most people cited not the actual like gameplay and what you're doing, but actually like the technical glitches and the graphics, the just like actually playing the game is hard to do. And the FPS drops and everything. So I decided I was going to try it only because I was in a fortunate enough position where I got this game for free. So I did not pay my hard earned cash for it. Just a disclaimer there. But yeah, I've been playing this game for free. So this game, I was prepared to not like it because in the first place, I'm not a huge Pokemon fan. Don't ignore all the Pokemon in the back of my screen right now, but not the biggest Pokemon.
You always say this about Zelda too, and then you got the hats and.
Hey,
I have no problem contributing to the merch, but
yeah.
I will not support these games.
Hey, those are mine, actually. Those aren't mine. I just steal things. Anyway, but yeah, so this Pokemon game, I was prepared to not like it. And the first thing that I noticed when I started was that I was shocked how much freedom it actually gives you. And I really like this game, guys. Not even gonna lie. I do think that this game is probably the best Pokemon game I've ever played personally.
Biggest twist of
And-
2022. Holy moly. Alfredo
Yeah,
really likes this game.
I shocked myself. I didn't think I would like it. But I really love this game, and I'm actually pretty excited anytime that I get to play it. They take the approach of, okay, we're going to do what we should have done a long time ago, right? We're going to do a Breath of the Wild, an open world Pokemon game where you can see a Pokemon and catch it, go anywhere you want, go to any gym that you want, do all of these different activities, and you can do whatever you want. You're in Pokemon world. And the coolest part of it is that you can also do it co-op. And that's another thing that I was scared about. I was scared that, okay, this game doesn't run well in the first place, according to other people. How is it going to be when you bring a whole nother person or 3 other people into the multiplayer system of this, into your own worlds? And I'm shocked how well it works. Honestly, there are a lot of different games that can take notes into how to incorporate multiplayer. It works a lot better than, for example, Dark Souls. Dark Souls, you have to.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Yeah,
if you were
it
gonna
works. It works 1,000 times better than Elden.
You don't need a finger. What's that thing? Whatever that thing was.
No, and the coolest part is you don't have to go to a Poke Center. You don't have to go through anywhere. You can just open up your menu, say, I want to play multiplayer. It gives you a code, basically like a 5-letter code for someone to join your world. Enter it in. Immediately, they join your world.
That's cool.
And what's really another thing cool about it is that you can do all of the campaign together. So it doesn't force you out of anything. It allows you to basically save your progress, even if you're in somebody else's world. It will save your progress. Like if you decide, oh, let's both go over here together, catch this Pokemon. Let's go over here and do this particular gym together, for example. Yeah, you are like in your own instance of the gym. So like you can't like battle the same trainer together, but you individually can do that activity together and then be like, okay, let's go into this gym, do this stuff. And then after we're done, oh, I see this specific Pokemon like right over here. Let's go catch it. Something like that. It's just really, really smart how they incorporated it. And I have not experienced any additional lag or technical glitches in multiplayer thus far at all, which I'm shocked about. So I think really the multiplayer is what takes it to another level. But even playing this game on my own, like I haven't personally experienced any of the super lag, super technical glitches that a lot of the reviews were saying. I'm having a great old time and it's running pretty well. Now, what I will say is, yes, the graphics look bad. The graphics do not look great in this. I played PS2 games that look better than this game. But the freedom that you get to finally be in a Pokemon world and just be able to see an activity, see a gym, oh, it's all the way over here, let's go. Let's get on our little bikes and go together over here, accomplish this, and do whatever you want. It succeeds in doing that, and it's a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm curious because every review I read on this seemed like everybody liked the actual game.
Yeah.
And
great.
I get like technical problems should be applied, but why have they never applied to Pokemon before? Like, why is this the first year it seems that like we're noticing the technical problems of Pokemon games? I feel
Right.
like every single time a Pokemon game comes out, the main thing everybody says is, "Oh, look at the animations; they're the same. Look at it running at sub 20 frames." I hear this all the time, but they still get 90s and like 85s. Like, I'm like for it to like, it's almost like it ran out. Like that good grace ran out for this release, and it's interesting because for all the people who played it, everybody has said they like it a lot. And what I've seen of it, I think I'd like it a lot too. I just have too many Pokemon games to play before, and I have to justify, playing before I put down 60 for it. But it looks like it's a pretty good game, and it's good to hear like the multiplayer. That was the main part I was curious about, like how's that multiplayer going to work? And it seems, at least from you,
Oh, it's good.
it's really
It's
good.
good.
So
Can you stay
Yeah.
together as long as you want?
Yeah, you can go as far apart as you want, or you can stick together. There's no
What about,
tethering at all. There's nothing
about
like
the
that. You can do whatever you want.
what about the story? Can you advance the story in your game and
Yes.
your
You can, but you can advance the story as much as you want, but for you basically have to basically say, okay, we're gonna both go do this particular mission. Basically, you can't like be like, okay, let's activate this mission together. You have to say, okay, let's go to this place, and we're both gonna do the gym individually, but you're still in the same world. You
Yeah.
can't like battle the same trainer in a 2-on-2 Pokemon battle.
and your
Basically.
progress carries over from your multiplayer session back
Yeah.
to your single player session
It
easily.
does, which I was shocked about. And just to answer your question as to like just the technical glitches, to go a little bit into it, I have experienced like FPS drops, but it really hasn't been that bad so far in my experience. It would be a little bit not too noticeable. Now, I think what people are docking this game points off of is one, how ugly it looks, but also like there are instances, it's quite funny actually, I found, where in this game you are, in Pokemon University, basically anytime that you go to a more populated area, or well, not even populated area, any place with like NPCs, basically, sometimes, or pretty much all the time guaranteed, they are going to be running at like 3 FPS. Like they are like going moving like robots. There is a whole bunch of popping in this game. Things that are like right next to you, and Pokemon that are right next to you. When you're running around on your bike, you might just like get into a random encounter because like you weren't, the pop-in happened and the Pokemon decided to just spawn right on you. So there's that. There's sometimes buildings that do that. There's sometimes, flowers, different terrain, different trees. Those are the types of stuff that is a little bit jarring in this game, but it's really not that bad to take me out of the experience myself. The freedom, I guess, and the overarching improvements that they have made from previous Pokemon games, I think is worth it so far. Yes, it does have a long way to go in terms of Game Freak coming up to par with the technical level that all other Nintendo games should be at, but it's great. I think it's great. I'm having a lot of fun with it. Cole, I think you would have a lot of fun with it. But yeah, for me, best Pokemon game to date. Love it.
Cool. I can't wait to get started with it probably sometime next year. Because, regardless of the reviews, everything I've seen from the game, it looks really good. So hopefully it's the best Pokemon game ever made. If not, we'll wait for the next one. But
Yes.
Ben has a
As
list of
always.
games he wants to get to, and I think they all look really good.
Wait, I have one more game actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've been playing another game called The Devil in Me, which is the latest entry in the Dark Pictures Anthology. So, unlike the Rainbows and Sunshine of Pokemon, this is all about, oh, we're in a horror movie. Let's see how many of you I can keep alive. So this is a game that comes out, or yeah, this is a game that comes out every year, basically. Every year they have a new horror game that they come out with, Supermassive Games. And this time is basically a Saw experience where you are trapped in a murder hotel and there are booby traps galore, and you are trying to survive the night, basically trying not to trigger these booby traps. If you do, you're making these different Saw-like decisions as to who you're going to save, stuff like that. Typical Halloween kind of stuff. Now, unfortunately, this game shares a very something in common with Pokemon Scarlet in that this game has some of the most egregious bugs, technical bugs I have ever seen in a video game. I'm someone who looks forward to this game every single year, the new entry. I love these games. And after playing this game, I think I have definitely a new perspective for how polished some of the previous entries that Supermassive has published have gotten. I do play shared stories, so I'm basically playing with my best friend every year where we each control a character. And there are sometimes we're in the same scene controlling two different characters. Sometimes we're in different scenes and they're supposed to link up. In the past games, it is seamless. We have no bugs, everything. The scenes overlay perfectly. It's great. With this game, there are, scenes where they don't pop up the choices. There are in the gameplay itself. I'll look over to my friend and he's like in the air floating when on his screen he's shimming through the tunnel that he has to go through. It's just things that kind of take you out of it. Just some really weird bugs about this game, desyncing audio, stuff like that. And it's really unfortunate right now, the state of the game, because I do feel like if this game didn't have all of these bugs so far, I think it could be the best Dark Pictures Anthology game so far, because the setting is great. What they're actually doing with all of the death scenes and stuff is great. It's just the bugs that are really preventing me from loving this game so far. Now, I will say some of the bugs come from them being super ambitious about this game. So two things that they tried to added was a new traversal system. So instead of like a fixed camera where you're just walking around, picking up different environments, looking around, they included things like a parkour system. Basically, you can jog now. You can basically lift yourself up to a cliff and like press X to jump over a lock, things like that. A balancing mechanic. They also added something like an actual inventory system, which is like very reminiscent of point and click games. So these are two things that they never had. So you can find items in the environment, put them in your pocket, basically save them for later, maybe a key for when you'll need to unlock a door, or maybe like a weapon for when you have the option of stabbing the killer with. And yeah, they have some great stuff in, but the bugs really prevent you from enjoying it. Story's great so far, but I might have to, at this point, being about 3 hours in, I just played a scene where one of my characters actually died. And the reason why they died was because the game didn't pop up any option at all when there should have been given an option to do something. Basically, you're supposed to be able to do one thing or another to get away from the killer, and no option ever populates. So when things like that happen and the game is all about, how are you going to survive? What decisions you make, how in order to survive, and they don't give you those decisions, that's just it's bad for the game, because that's the whole point of it. So I might, unfortunately, even though I really enjoy the story of this game and what they're doing with it, the bugs are just so bad. And it's just funny because they're even worse than Pokemon Scarlet. So I think with this one, I'm going to put it down. I'm looking forward to reviewing this once I actually, wait a week, hopefully maybe 2 more weeks when there's some sort of patch, and then get back to it and have some updated thoughts on this game.
I feel like this came, like, I didn't see any promotion for it. Like,
there was promotion, but the problem is it's funny because I should have known, because I follow this game very closely, and for every year they actually have this game, a game published around Halloween time, like the middle of October, and they pushed it this time, and I have a feeling that the technical glitches and why it's not polished so much as the previous games is because this was the first year that they decided that they were going to develop 2 games at once. So earlier this year, we had the Quarry release, which was another full scale, choose your own adventure horror
Right.
game. And all the love went into that game, clearly. And the teams clearly supported that game. I played that game. It was pretty polished. Yeah, I didn't experience anything bad in terms of bugs there. But because of that, this game definitely has taken some hits. And I'm scared to know if they didn't even delay it for a month, like what this could have been. It could have been even worse in terms
Right.
of bugs. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have a
Yeah,
feeling
it
that's what
seems like
happened.
I'm not sure how big Supermassive is, but they've definitely got a few projects in motion concurrently. So like they're doing the yearly Dark Pictures game. They had the Quarry, and now they've also just recently announced the Dark Pictures VR game, which has got to be a different team, still doing that. So they've definitely got a few projects running concurrently. My guess would be that the significant new mechanics added were the primary culprit of the extra glitchy experience. I'm sure lots of dev time was dedicated to figuring out how those things worked. That would have been spent on polish. But yeah, I mean, like, that is part of what I think the value proposition is in developer side to releasing a game like this every year, like an iterative game that comes out on a steady pace. It's that you've got your code base, you've got your tech stack, right, that you're using to create this different content on. And yes, it can be dangerous to like move the needle too much at any one time on that stuff, when you've got a new release coming in 9 months, like that kind of thing. This is a bit of like what we saw with Telltale too, where they didn't have time to update their engine, even though
Right.
they desperately needed to update their engine. They didn't have time because there were 3 games that were supposed to come out within the next 9 months that were all going to be using the prior versions of the engines. So it just like, it was incremental updates as they kicked the can further and further. What they needed to do was like stop everything for a year, but
Yeah.
that's not how the business works. So
Exactly.
I think it's safe to say that Supermassive's docket for this year was Supermassive. But
hey,
Ooh.
mixed reception. I'll take it. I'm here all night. But let's talk about the other games that Ben has been playing, because I'm looking at Ben's list, and Ben's been playing some Heat. So I'm going to give him a second to go into this.
Hot off of Symphony of the Night, one of the great Metroidvanias of all time, the Vania in Metroidvania, in fact. I was itching for more, so I jumped into Blasphemous. I actually downloaded it at the same time. I downloaded Blasphemous, Hollow Knight, and Bloodstained.
It's a good ass list of games right there.
Yeah. I played Blasphemous. I probably put in 4 or 5 hours or so. I got 15 to 20% of the way complete with the map, and just kind of, I really enjoy the aesthetic of this game. Do not enjoy the gameplay as much. There's an element of it that is a little bit too unresponsive and too unfair in like a kind of combination there, where it just was not. I was bouncing off of it pretty quickly.
I'm interested.
Yeah. It's pretty tough, but I also feel like it doesn't quite like extend the olive branch as much as it needs to in order to keep you hooked on repeating the same thing over and over and over again. You guys know I love the Souls games and that kind of thing, so I have no problem with repetition. And actually, the game that I bounced to has plenty of that too. But in the case of Hollow Knight, which is what I jumped to after Blasphemous, I feel like there's a much better blend of ability to go and do other things and upgrade yourself and better your character before attempting a boss again. Like, things are optional. Everything is optional enough that there's always something else to kind of move to when you're stuck in a given area. So yeah, I had played Hollow Knight rather for about like 15 hours. Like, I got pretty deep into it a couple years ago, and then stopped for whatever reason. And it's always kind of been on the back of my mind, like, man, I really got to get back to Hollow Knight at some point, because I just love this game. I was just talking about kind of the aesthetic of Blasphemous, and even though it's a very different aesthetic, I appreciate these games in similar ways, where there's just, I've never like really looked at anything quite like either of them. Blasphemous, of course, is like a very religious inspired, like Catholic inspired kind of twisted religiosity to it, where you're like collecting these different baubles to make up your rosary and stuff.
Yeah,
and it's very
Blasphemy.
creepy, very cool.
It's very creepy because I
Yeah.
remember I started that game and I used to play a lot of religious games because there'd be a lot of religious games in my aftercare, like just small board games and stuff like that, like that had a lot of religious symbolism in there. And so when I first started off like Blasphemy, I'm like, this is like a blast from the past in a weird way because it's kind of like a perversion.
Yeah,
of
but
it.
it's all fucked up.
Yeah,
Yep.
so it's like it's always been a weird play, but I respect the game so much because it speaks to me in a weird way.
And then Hollow Knight, like kind of on the other end of the spectrum, is like a very for how difficult it is and for the type of game that it is. It's very cute. Like my wife was watching me play it. She's like, "Oh, I love this. This is adorable."
It's peaceful.
And-
I
Right,
describe
it
it
is.
as peaceful.
And then it's very difficult also too. It's very very tricky. But I really dig it, and it's got some pretty good combat. I think for a Metroidvania, more than most Metroidvanias rather. It's easy to see kind of where the limitations of 2D hit this game, where it's like really all about timing your jumps and your dashes and your like when you're gonna strike down versus strike to the right, like that kind of stuff. But it is fun enough, and like I said, there's enough ability to kind of level yourself up in a sense, because there's no levels in this game, but acquire new powers and new I forget what they're, charms that you can use to give yourself new powers to kind of get an edge on any given boss or scenario. So yeah, I got like really, really sucked into Hollow Knight, and I started from scratch. So I played another whole campaign for almost 40 hours before I felt done with it. I didn't quite polish off everything. I think my like map completion was 80%. So I completed the main game. I did a lot of the Grim Troop stuff and a lot of the side stuff, but I didn't totally polish it off. And I'm kind of like, this is where this year where I've sworn off platinums is like, I think this was a really good idea, because I could have played Hollow Knight for another 10 hours after I already felt like I was getting bored with it. But instead, I'm not. And that 10 hours is going to go to some other games that I'll probably talk about next week: Norco, Pentiment, and Somerville. So, I'm able to broaden my horizons and play more. And hopefully by the Game of the Year discussion at the end of the year, I will have more than 4 games to choose from that come out this year.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Did you,
Oh,
quick question, did you finish Hollow Knight, get the true ending?
I don't know if it was the true ending. It probably was not the true ending. I am aware of another ending that I decided that I was like, I'm not gonna go for that one.
Got you. Okay.
So I don't know
We'll talk later.
which
I'll
one is
ask
the
what
true ending
boss.
or not. Yeah.
It depends on what boss was your final boss.
Gotcha.
But we'll talk later. We'll talk.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my experience with Hollow Knight. Obviously, like, I mean, everyone has already sung the praises of this game enough. It's absolutely fantastic, but everyone should check it out. And yeah, so the only other game I've been playing of note is God of War Ragnarok, which I missed our impressions episode, so I didn't get to give some of my impressions. And I gotta be honest, guys, like for 2 days in a row now, my wife has asked me, what do you want to do? We're playing God of War Ragnarok together. And I have said, not God of War.
Yeah.
I had a feeling because
No,
this game-
I saw you playing Hollow Knight, and I was like,
Yeah.
what is he doing?
I feel like I've played it before. That's the problem. Played it 3 years ago.
Yeah. This game is turning me away, and I'm very frustrated by that fact, because I really want to see where it's going, but this game does not have the urgency of pace in its opening section that the first game did, and it sorely needs it. It has a bombastic opening. It's got a fantastic first, let's say, 2 hours, and then it begins to drag, and then it starts to really drag.
Mhm.
And I feel like I'm at the point where it has been dragging now for 6 hours, and I am fed up. Not only that, but there is something this is a small thing that many people have complained about that is absolutely ruining my experience with this game. And that is the constant fucking chatter from the NPCs telling you what to do all the time. It is driving me up a wall.
I have a solution for you, because the Dukes mentioned this, and On
Can you
hard
turn
mode,
it off in the options menu?
no, but on hard mode they don't do that. I've been
But-
playing on hard mode. I've never had.
But
this
then the
problem.
combat's harder, right?
Yeah, but that's
I'm playing with my wife. She's like she doesn't want to play on hard, and I respect that.
And there is a big difficulty gap after you get the middle one is I feel like reasonable, and then the fourth one I tried that gets pretty hard. I don't even want to know what the fifth one is.
That's what I'm on. I'm not
The
even
fifth
on
one?
the crazy one. No, I'm on the fourth one.
The fourth one for me, like I could get through it, but I'm gonna die a bit more time. That's gonna be more frustrating. So I'm just, and
Yeah.
but that's a really good criticism. Like
Yeah.
they talk a lot, and I'm
It's-
just like,
it-
shut up and let
yeah.
me figure it
Yeah,
out.
exactly. It is the only way I can describe it is that they are impatient. Like the developers are impatient for you to solve any given puzzle, for you to figure out what the core objective of a boss battle is, and these NPCs just shout at you and shout at you and shout at you. And then when you do it, they patronize you and say, "Oh, good job, Kratos." "Oh, what a great God of War! You figured out where to throw your axe." It's killing me. It is seriously killing me, and it's spoiling my time with this game. It might seem like a little thing, but it's becoming a big deal as it wears on.
That's respectable. So it sounds like you and Cole have different grievances with the game, because
But I
Cole's
mean, yeah.
Cole's is more. I was expecting something different, and it's not delivering on what I thought this was going to be. Is that fair to say, Cole?
No, it's delivering on exactly what I
got
thought
farther?
it was going to be. No,
You got farther.
I just thought that yeah, a little bit, but like I said, that's not a bad game. It's just what I thought it was going to be, and it is what it is, and it is what it was. It's like it's just
You're not blown away.
no, I'm not blown away at all by anything.
I guess maybe for me, if I had I don't know how y'all feel about original God of War 2018, but I never was ever in love with that game. Like I always just thought this is cool. This is a good game, but I'm good off my one experience with it. I don't think it's not even in my top 10, top 15 PlayStation games I've played. So it's like I don't have any sort of not love. I don't have any, feelings towards it. It's just a good experience. This game has made me like that game a lot more, because I kind of see that game in a different light now. And so for me, that's why I like it so much. But I can understand, pointing out little things like, the NPCs. That is annoying. Like that is a truthfully annoying thing that even to this day, that's definitely a criticism for me. Cole's, I have less of a problem with it being what I always knew what it was going to be. As soon as we saw the trailers, I knew okay, this is going to literally be a continuation of God of War.
Yeah, and I knew that too. Like I'm on the same page. That's what I expected. So I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not that excited about it.
Yeah, I think
itching to
I
get back
somewhat
to it.
share Cole's criticism here in that what this game needed was a hook to really grab you to make up for the fact that everything else is similar. And it's taking a while. We've got this thread of Ragnarok, but I'm 12, 13 hours into this game, and the point is not manifesting itself yet.
Right.
It's taking way too long. And there was one section that really killed the momentum for my wife and I both, where Atreus goes off and meets a
I know what
character
you're talking about.
Yeah, that
I
was
feel the same.
awful. That was 2 hours of awful, where we were like, "Oh my god, I'm tearing my hair out. This game is not what I signed up for."
Part.
I feel the same. I totally feel where you're coming from, Ben. In my initial impressions, I was saying the same thing. I was saying I think that this game has a huge pacing issues for all of the reasons that you were just talking about. But since then, I have gotten a significant portion. Well, about 10 more hours further. I'm about 24 hours into this game now. And the way I've been playing is I've been taking my time on the game, though. So I don't think I'm as far as what I should be if I was mainlining it. But I've been basically doing all of the side quests, or not all of them now, because I'm at the point where they're kind of stacking up. So I'm doing a lot of them, but not all of them. But I did hit a point in the story where it finally got out of that slog for me, because I was feeling the same way, where pacing issues, nothing is really happening. There's all of this build up. and no payoff in sight, basically. But once it hit a certain point, it started feeling like, oh, this is pretty epic now. Like, I really like the choices that they're making narratively. I like what they're doing with all of their characters, but it did take a really long time to get there. But I do reflect on, okay, how was this different from 2018? Because I just played it for this exact purpose. How is it different from the first game? And I can confidently say that what they're doing with this game is everything I had hoped and exceeded, honestly, because I kind of looked at 2018 before I replayed it in like much higher regard than what a 2022 game actually is now, when we have things like Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima. Like, I replayed it and I was definitely not as high on that game for what they did. And this game, unlike Horizon Forbidden West, which I was expecting the world from, and it performed in terms of game mechanics and not much else. It just did feel like, oh, another continuation, like a sequel. This one really does feel like more than a sequel, like a deserved sequel. And in that, they're doing, okay, more gameplay stuff, but also doing more story stuff. Like, they're giving me everything and more that I wanted out of the sequel, and not just, oh, I get like a new weapon or a new skill tree or something like that.
Just takes a while to get there.
Exactly. That's the problem. It takes a while.
So advise me here, Alfredo. You said you've been playing all the side quests. My wife and I have been blasting through the main quest, and we basically only played one side quest so far.
Okay.
And so we're like 12 or 13 hours in. So we may be closer to you in terms of like the actual core story than it would seem based on our discrepancy. Should we keep blasting forward with the main quest, or should we start smelling the roses because that's where some of the good content is?
Go ahead, Alfredo. I mean, for me, like, I don't think I'd have the same appreciation for the story if I didn't do a lot of these side quests and a lot of traveling on the boats and sleds and everything. Because to me, that's where some of the best content of the game is located, where I'm just sitting here listening to this lore dump. You know, like, that's the best part of the story of the game for me so far, where I'm just sitting here and Mimir is just like talking about I feel like it's not too much of a spoiler. Like, Lemir's talking about Thor and how he's like, yeah, he's a raging alcoholic. And then another character's like, well, he's actually not alcoholic and he's actually trying to do better since his kids were killed in the last game. And Mimir's like, that's I respect him for making that decision. I'm like, I'm just eating this shit up. like this is so weird that like these characters are so like human and have humanity, you know. Like a lot of games I can't say the same for. Like, there are definitely a select few games where I do think they know what they're doing story wise. This is one of those where it's like, even in those side moments of conversation, just riding in the boat, I'm getting answers as to like, one, how Kratos got here, you know, like why didn't Kratos train Atreus in Spartan? Why didn't he do that? Like, you're getting all these random answers to questions. And it's to a detriment to a certain extent because YouTube just clips these moments and puts them on my timeline at all times. So I'm getting some spoilers along the way. So, but besides that, like that's where I got enjoyment. I don't think I would like the game as much as I just mainlined it.
For me, it's hard to answer that question because I do think that some of the pacing issues that I was experiencing would have been helped if I did mainline it, to a certain degree. Because for me, the side quests aren't anything revolutionary. Like, the side quests aren't what I would say like on the same spectrum as Horizon Forbidden West. Like, that's like God tier side quests for me. These side quests you're just doing more of the same. Yes, you are doing them with your companions at the time, and it's usually involved in like their past. So you're getting to know like who they were before we even met them. You're getting to know these side stories of what they did before, basically. But I don't think they're personally that well done. And it's because of a personal grievance of mine when it comes to video game design. And God of War chooses to do one of the cardinal sins that I think is bad in a video game, where you have to read this like long ass textbook in order to understand like this part of some of the side quests. So, for example, you might be going on a quest. You're doing something with Mimir because he's right on your shoulder, on your hip, right, all the time. So you might be doing something for him, and it'll be explaining something. Partially, they'll be having a conversation talking about what's happening in the side quest, and then they'll be like, "Oh, what's this on the wall?" And it's one of the like lore text dumps, basically, that you have to read. So you'll press square or whatever to interact with it, and then they'll go, wow. And then they'll start talking about what you have to go into the menu and read this long textbook about what actually happened. They like react to it, expecting you to read this long thing.
They did some of that in Horizon, right? But except the way they did in Horizon, I really appreciated was like they summarized it. They gave you like a 2-sentence bullet point summary of what was in there. So if you were really interested by that summary, you could go in and read it. But otherwise, you had enough of a gist that you didn't have to read it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and God of War doesn't do that, and I'm a person who I don't like that. I don't like reading these long things in order to get what's happening in a game. I would prefer it to be a conversation, kind of like how they did in God of War 2018, where it's a boat ride, and throughout the actual quest, they're giving you actual story.
Well, that still happens.
Yeah, it does still happen, and
I feel like it's just
great.
too much information at the end of the day because they you still get the boat. Like that's where I've gotten some of my favorite content is those boat rides and the sleigh rides and everything and whatever transportation you're using. Mm-hmm. I do agree with you though. I think that having to press, I think it's the touchpad you have to press. You press touchpad to access your notes to read what you and Mimir. I'm like, we could have just said it
because it's not just one. It's multiple different things too.
I feel like the first game actually, because I don't think Kratos knew the language in the first game, so I feel like whenever that happened, Mimir would just say it.
Exactly, or Atreus, like he would say, translate it basically for you, and it would be like short thing, like 2 sentences, 3 sentences, and they would talk about it. Now it's like a couple paragraphs.
I mean, to be fair, like I don't mind it from the perspective of like if it's something I'm not interested in, I know immediately, so I'm not about to read this. But if it's something that I'm interested in, I am going to read it. So
but the problem is the characters will react to it and keep talking about it as if you know the information. So you'll just be like, wait, what? Like, what's going on if you don't read it? It kind of like forces you to read it, unless you're going to just be lost. But to answer your question, Ben, I think a good mix. Maybe don't do what I'm doing and don't do like every single one, but I think it definitely would help if you did like in between each like big story arc, maybe do like 2 side quests. I think that would help actually because you do get to know the characters more.
And I said it last week, like it's really cool when you do a side quest with, let's say, another character, and they'll point out like, "Oh, you should have done this with the other character you were with." I'm like, that's pretty cool. Like, that's cheeky, but it's kind of cool that like they basically have crafted this side quest twice with different dialogue options.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Because we did do I think only one side quest that was like fairly early on in the game, and Atreus and Kratos are talking in a way that really only made sense for that moment in the plot. It was like, okay, they're talking about their current concerns,
right?
So like I'm like, wow, this suggests quite a lot of variability here with these side quests, where depending on how you approach them, it changes the way that you're going to experience them.
And I'm sure it helps that it's not an open world. So I guess if it was an open world, I feel like that'd be almost impossible to implement. But since it's kind of this structured, relatively linear experience, I'm sure it's a little easier. But nonetheless, it's impressive to me.
Yeah.
But
still a great game.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on this, critically acclaimed game, but not everybody has to, be head over heels over it.
Yeah. Long and short, I got to see what all the fuss is about still, because like it ain't it so far.
We'll see where you are.
Like everything that is like a gripe that I have right now with this game is reminding me why Elden Ring was so magical.
Oh God, here we go again with Elden Ring.
Hey, you can speak good about Strangers of Paradise. You have a flow for it.
You know what? We'll hold that talk for the Game of the Year.
I swear, if that goddamn game finds its way on our Game of the Year podcast, Alfredo.
I just need to convince one person.
Good luck with that. Well, I don't think Yuji Naka was able to convince the police that he should be free, because unfortunately him and 3 other Square Enix employees or former employees have been arrested on insider trading allegations. I thought this story was fucking insane. But
little
it
bit.
makes sense when you read like how it happened. Like, just to give a little more context, there was a Dragon Quest game. I don't know the exact name of it, but it was a Dragon Quest mobile game. And what the reports are saying is key employees from Square Enix knew that this game was coming out, and Yuji Naka specifically, he had invested $20,000 US. I don't know the yen equivalent, but he invested $20,000 into said company before the game was officially announced. And that's kind of the layman's story of what happened. Anybody have any thoughts or anything that add to the story in general?
Was he developing this game? Was he developing the Dragon Quest game?
No.
But he
He
knew the
was
developers,
working at
right?
Square Enix at the time when it got announced.
And I think in the story, right, it's like he's the third person, actually, the third Square Enix employee
Yes.
to actually have gotten arrested from this one Dragon Quest, I guess, insider trading.
So it would
crime.
It would have been worse if he had bet against, like, say he shorted the company when he knew the Dragon Quest game was coming out. So at least he was betting that it was going to be a success. I mean, or that the stock price would go up. You know,
Yeah,
kind of like Pete Rose.
I'm always iffy on this because you watch you know NFL, right, Cole?
Mm-hmm.
You heard what happened to Calvin Ridley over on your team, the Falcons.
Yeah, Calvin Ridley. Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody who doesn't know, he is an NFL wide receiver, and he was caught gambling. I think he was betting on the Falcons, right?
Yeah. It's just like Pete Rose with baseball. He was betting on his team.
And I've always
You can't do that.
Yeah, I've always been in the
No.
mindset like, why can't you bet on yourself? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I get betting for the other team. Like,
I'm
that
with
makes
you.
sense. Of course, you shouldn't bet on the other team because then you're gonna play worse. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense. But if you're betting on yourself to have a good game and
I
your
agree
team
with
to get
you.
the win, like
I get it though more in this. I agree for that, but in this sense, like I think is it the fact that
This is
he
different. I'm
knew
not saying
exactly-
this is different. I'm not.
Well,
I'm not-
because he knew exactly when, like, if it got delayed or like if it was coming out early and they haven't announced it, something like that. So that plays a little bit into it as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely not saying it's apples and orange. I just hate those because he brought up Pete Rose. I feel the same way about Pete Rose, where I'm like, you should be able to bet on yourself, but you shouldn't be able to bet with insider knowledge on a specific, I don't know what he knew specifically. I think he only knew that the game was coming out, but
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
it seems like the existence of the game was what was the insider information. So yeah, buying a bunch of shares of the developer before they announced that they're working on like a major Japanese IP, right? Dragon Quest is fucking enormous in Japan.
Yep.
yeah, I think
Way bigger than it is here.
Oh yeah,
so-
that's the thing. It's not like here. It's fairly big.
Yeah,
Like
But
people take PTO in Japan,
right.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
Dragon
They
Quest.
release it on
Practically a
Friday
national day off.
specifically because
Right.
so many people want to play it. We'll buy it.
So yeah, it's this is like we're watching like the downward spiral of Yuji Naka here, in a way, because it started with Balan Wonder World, which was
you're right.
horrible, and then he left
Allegedly.
Square Enix shortly thereafter. Although then like 6 months ago he took to Twitter saying that Square Enix removed him as director of the project like 10 months before its release. So he was like his departure from Square Enix was at that point kind of in name only after the game came out. But yeah, it's like it is a big question of this, pretty legendary developer. I mean, creator of Sonic. What's going on here?
Not even on the eve. What's the opposite of the eve? But after Sonic Frontiers.
Sonic Frontiers. Yeah. Was he involved in Sonic Frontiers?
Highly
No.
doubt it.
No.
Okay.
I don't think any. Besides his name, probably
Right.
being somewhere for creating Sonic.
Last thing he worked on for Square Enix was Balan Wonderworld.
And what a
God
great
knows when he
game.
worked with Sega. Probably in like way before. So I feel bad, because just me personally, like I don't think that like I've seen worse cases of insider trading than this that have resulted in people getting jailed. At the same time, I don't know Japanese laws.
Right.
So, it's obviously a different place. You have to abide by the laws of where you're currently located. So, yeah, hopefully, if I hope he goes. I don't think it's controversial to say I hope he goes free at some point.
I'm sure he will with that.
Maybe
I
he'll
hope
make
it's
another
a
Sonic
stupid
game?
mistake, but this is like a pretty classic. You can't do it. You can't do
Right.
that. This is why these laws exist. We're supposed to all be
Mhm.
playing on the same on somewhat of a level playing field here.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Cole, any love for Yuji Naka at all?
No, not at all.
Aren't you playing Sonic Frontiers? You love
I
it.
am. I haven't played anymore, but yeah.
You wouldn't have Sonic Frontiers if it wasn't for Yuji Naka.
Right.
Honestly, I'm not that big of a Sonic fan. I mean, I like Sonic Frontiers, but I've never been a big Sonic fan.
Dang.
I used to be. I used to be cursed, I'd say, with a Sonic love. I don't know why I loved him so much, but it's because I
He's
didn't
great.
really.
What do you mean?
I don't. It's like I went back and played. I downloaded Sonic Origins, which has like 1, 2, CD, and 3,
Ooh.
and I was playing
Cool.
through them, and I'm just like, these don't hold up. They just don't. Like for me, they don't hold up the same way that if I load up like Super Mario World, like I love that game. Like I can
Yes.
play. I'll probably play that game to the end of the time. It's probably whenever I I'm downloading anything, that's always the first round I download because I love that game. Just to see how it plays on like my new PC or anything, But Sonic, I don't know. Every time I try to go back, I used to love those games as a kid. Like I don't know.
Thomas benchmarks his 3080 with
Right.
Super Mario Brothers.
Running at like 200 frames per second.
2000.
Better not miss a jump on that. But yeah, no, I feel bad for him though. I feel like I'm not gonna say he's wrongfully imprisoned because obviously he broke laws. But I wish we had some of these same type of laws for other like avenues of business here in the U.S. But
I'm sure it'll be fine.
you say that he's sitting in a jail cell, just like I'm not fine off right now.
I think he'll be fine.
Maybe Sonic will break him out.
Right.
Well, speaking, not breaking out, but coming out, we have The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt next gen update coming on December
forgot about
14th.
Finally, God.
This doesn't affect me because I don't own it on console at all. I have it on PC, so I don't I'm not either way about it, but I'm happy that people are going to be able to play this game at, the best possible quality. I assume it's going to be 4K 60. I think
Yeah, they haven't announced specs right yet, right?
Nope.
No, they haven't. That's just what I'm
Next gen.
assuming. Maybe it'll be something lower, but I think this is a good thing. I like that CD Projekt Red has learned the art of just announce it and let it come out in a reasonable manner. Instead of building this hype for it. I feel like they announced this a while ago, then it kind of got put to the back burner and talked about it for a while, and then they said a couple days ago, it's coming out in a couple weeks. I was like, all right, cool.
Well, the status of this was in question for a while. I was not confident that it was going to be coming out this year because
Me
it was
either.
originally the port work was originally being handled by Saber Interactive.
Really?
And assumedly something to do with the Russia-Ukraine war. The contract, ended and CD Projekt
Had to bring
Red,
it back in house.
kind of cut ties with Saber and they brought it in house at that point. That was like halfway through this year. So it was not clear like what the state of that port was and what when we were going to get it. I'm happy it's here.
Yeah, same. I think, honestly, I feel like with this news, somehow CD Projekt Red always breaks records every time that they have something new, whether it's a DLC, a new freaking jacket in their game, whatever it is, we break records. So I feel like when we actually get this next gen patch, I feel like there's going to be a whole bunch of people on PS5 and Xbox playing it. And I feel like even it might get hyped up and memed out so that we break some more Steam records, because that always seems to happen with this game. Like me personally, come December 14th, I will be playing Witcher.
Yeah, me too.
If
I
my
might
wife and I
load
are
it up
done
too.
with God of War by that point, which I hope we are, this was next on our dock.
Wishful thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I might be playing too. I mean, I think this is all just a big advertisement for Witcher Season 3. which I believe drops January.
Oh, does it? I know that they had that movie, the spin-off movie, I think, coming out in December, I think. So it might, there you go, tie in directly to that as well.
Yeah, so I think that that's part of the reason why they want to get it out. I think it's a good move. I think that it's gonna relight some of the, because Witcher 3 at the end of the day, I think is gonna be more, it's gonna be like Skyrim, I feel, where it's like they're probably gonna feast on this game forever.
Yep.
You're gonna see re-release after re-release. And truth be told, it's good enough of a game that it warrants all that. So happy to see it. Any final thoughts on Witcher 3 next gen update?
Can't wait. I will be playing it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe on stream. We'll see.
I'll watch that. And of course, Alfredo, when do we stream?
We stream every Saturday at around 10 p.m. Eastern. And also on Sunday nights at around the same time.
Make sure you stay tuned for that, of course. Next topic. Didn't really have a good transition for this one, so I apologize. So specific. Google rumored to have paid Activision off to not open rival app stores. Evidence shows Google paying Blizzard over $360 million over 3 years. Sounds like typical Google to me. But I don't know if anybody else wants to defend Google for this. The floor is yours if you want to, or if you want to comment on this in any way.
Yeah, this is interesting to me just because like this is like the soft arm twisting that Google has to do because they have a
lot of money.
They have an open platform in quotes that allows this type of stuff, right? Whereas Apple doesn't. Like they don't have to pay anyone off to not do this on iPhone. They just say it's not allowed. You can't do it on iPhone. So there's this kind of strange cartel like behavior almost where money's changing hands so that competition doesn't arise. Well, at least that's what Epic alleges is happening here. And this is the nugget, right? Because like we don't actually know that this money changed hands because of some potential competition, but that seems to be the potential dynamic at play here. And I think this is the case that Epic's lawsuits against Google, which are separate from their lawsuits against Apple, which are already wrapped up, Epic's lawsuits against Google for similar reasons are still ongoing. So we don't know what the outcome of that case is going to be.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that Google tends to, like, I didn't know that this was a regular business practice for Google where they're like, hey, we'll pay you millions of dollars not to compete with us. I mean, I guess it's a sustainable business practice because apparently they've been doing it for, I think the number is like over 24 deals like this. And
yes, that's what I saw too.
Yeah, and specifically they paid $360 million to only Blizzard in order for them specifically not to open an app store. So who knows how money over the course of those 24 deals they have actually paid out. But I mean, it makes sense because, they want to keep the monopoly. And in order to do that, they got to spend a little money to incentivize people not to compete with them. Kind of sucks for the end users like we are, but yeah, definitely a scummy business practice.
And I would just say, Cole, do you have anything to add? Just want to make sure. Do you have anything?
No, it's just a business deal. I mean, I think it's fine.
No, I just wanted to make sure I pointed out, just according to Reuters, Activision said it never entered an agreement with Google to not open an app store. It just says that. But I mean, yeah, and
It's kind of like under the table money. Like, hey, we'll pay this for you if you don't do it.
Entered an agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's not put it on
the wording is key there.
Right.
Also, Google said the lawsuit is baseless and full of mischaracterizations. But that doesn't mean everything is not true.
Right. We got evidence. We got documents showing 24 deals.
Yeah, there's got to be something. I mean, $360 million over 3 years you don't just take a briefcase with that much money.
Right.
Right. You see some employee with like 5 briefcases.
Yeah. Right.
Hey guys, I'm here. I'm Mr. Google.
Just on the metro, the subway. Like, don't mind me.
Right. It sounds like the CEOs like talked to each other and like had put this together basically, something like that.
Yeah.
So it didn't have to be on paper, but apparently it was on some sort of paper. So
Well, speaking of on paper, it is on paper now that Deep Silver Volition is now to become a part of Gearbox Entertainment. And this has to do, of course, with the Saints Row reboot, quote
got a typo.
unquote, not meeting expectations. I mean, I think it's safe to say Saints Row probably is the most disappointing game of the year. Is that fair to say?
I'm still
Just in
gonna
terms of
play
what
it.
it needed to
play it.
do and what it accomplished. I feel like
Yeah.
it came and what was riding on it. I feel like it came the most short.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody really wanted to see it do bad, but it did.
Oh.
And that's just the fact of the matter. And as a result, Volition is looking to be folded in like it's like what Activision does to all the studios that aren't Infinity War and makes them work on Call of Duty. It seems like that unfortunately has happened to Volition. Is anybody sad about this? I feel a little bit of sadness, but not really. But does anybody feel really sad about it?
I'm sad about it.
Yeah.
But just because like I feel like they have the potential for their IPs to be so good, because I used to love Saints Row. I was looking forward to Saints Row, the reboot, so much. And then when it got 4s and 5s, then I was like, okay, I guess I'm not going to get this game that I was really excited about. But at the same time, Volition has like really been on a losing streak to the point where I don't know. I kind of, don't hate me, I'm going to get hated for this. I kind of feel like another developer that is on the same trajectory as Volition, where they have good ideas, they have great things, but like they're just going down in quality, everything. I feel like Platinum Games might turn into them because they're going down the same road where they haven't had a hit in a while.
Bayonetta 3 has got an 89 on Metacritic. What are you talking about?
Okay, well, yeah, well, diamond in the rough, right?
In
They
the same-
got
in the
what?
same
It
year
came out
as,
like 4 years ago.
What
Babylon's
was
Fall, right?
Babylon's Fall?
Babylon's
was this year
Fall.
too,
What
right?
happened to that? There's a whole
Hey, we
bunch of
can't
games
win
with
them
Platinum.
all. I'm not gonna let you badmouth.
That's all I'm saying. I'm
this.
just scared. I'm concerned is all I'm saying. And with Deep Silver Volition, I feel like they also are someone who they have the clear skills to do it, and they have the IP that can go really far. But I don't know. Hopefully them getting like folded, I guess, into Gearbox Entertainment. Maybe Gearbox will be able to take over some of their IP and bring some life into some of their properties.
Yeah, I'm disappointed too, for a few reasons. One, there is room for a GTA-like game right now. Rockstar has left the door wide open by taking so long between releases here. So there is room for a less impressive GTA-like game to come in. In fact, I think there's room for many of them.
I feel like Watch Dogs is kind of fit
Yeah,
that a little
sure.
bit.
Watch Dogs can hit it from one angle. Saints Row can
Right.
hit it from another angle. There's a few different ways to look at it, and these games come out every few years. It's not like we're getting. It's not like the old days of GTA clones where everything's a GTA clone, right?
Right.
So
I think that studios are afraid to, because I don't think that you want your game being referred to as a GTA clone. Like that comes
I
with a
think-
certain connotation.
I don't know that they're afraid to. I think it's just so hard. Like
To crack the
make
formula.
something. Yeah, even Saints Row was in the best position to do it, and they still couldn't do it. Like I was pretty hyped. I was pretty hyped for this game too. Like me and Alfredo were kind of on the same page with this, but when it came out and reviews were lackluster, I backed off of it, didn't play it. But I think that's really part of it. I think it's just so hard to do right.
the other thing that's disappointing to me about this is that it's just kind of a smaller part of a much larger narrative, is the consolidation of studios in the
Right.
industry. I mean, this studio was already consolidated to a degree, being under the Embracer Group umbrella, but now it is literally consolidated into another development studio. So its independent identity is being stripped from it, and it's being dissolved into another existing studio. So like that's sad. Not saying that that this isn't necessarily the best. Like, would you rather the studio shut down, for instance, versus be folded into Gearbox? Yeah, I'd rather them be folded into Gearbox and everyone keep their jobs. But it's sad that it couldn't have been another way. The other thing that's strange about this, and Matt Bliss kind of points this out in the chat, but I actually think I have a different perspective on this than Matt does. What's noted in this gamesindustry.biz article that we're sourcing, although that they didn't originally report on this, I don't think. Embracer's sales this year are up 190%, and they say, quote, in particular supported by the reboot of Saints Row, end quote. However, it said that the title's reception did not fully meet the full expectations and left the fan base partially polarized, end quote. So what I read from that is something different than what Matt's reading, which is that revenue was up, like the game was in some way a financial success, right? It raised the boats of maybe it didn't quite fully meet their financial expectations, but I don't read this game didn't sell enough units from that. I read they didn't do a good job on the product. And that's more important to us, which is an interesting, strange thing you don't often hear from a studio being dissolved or being shut down in some way. So to me feels like this studio had like a last chance, and they blew it, and it sucks. That's why I'm saddened by it.
Yeah, and on my end, I don't know. I feel like this pairing of Deep Silver with Gearbox, these are two. I feel like these are two pretty different companies, like pretty different game studios themselves, because Volition, I think of like South Park kind of humor, right? Where they're doing those types of games. And then Gearbox, of course, we all know they do Borderlands, right? Which is a similar, it's not quite South Park type of humor, but it's kind of like slapstick-ish. So I think it could work, but they're very, very, very different games. And I feel like they approach games in a different way, even though they both say, oh, let's do slapstick kind of humor. Volition tends to approach their games with like the raunchy type of comedy, and Gearbox is more of just slapstick, just plain stupid. So it'll be interesting seeing, since these two are being paired together, what do they decide to do next? Are we going to get another chance for Saints Row in the future, and what will that look like? Will it be the classic raunchiness that Saints Row has always had, or will it turn more into the typical Borderlands kind of humor? But I do have a feeling that unfortunately, it will be a while before we even see Saints Row.
Saints Row is going
away
again for a while.
Yeah.
I think, and I agree with you, I think Saints Row is going away for a while. I think that Saints Row would work better as a looter shooter. I think it could. I think the way it's gone so far, I don't think you can make it a GTA clone anymore. I think you have to radically change it. Maybe it's a spin-off game like they did for Agents of Mayhem, but I think doing a different approach, I feel would maybe justify getting a Saints Row game out a little earlier. You can't just release a sequel to this game.
Right.
You're going to be too much time, too much resources, and you're not going to get a good result probably. I think you can do something different in a different genre, and maybe you can save the franchise. I don't know, but I don't want to see this franchise die, but I think you guys are right. It most likely is on death's door.
Yeah. Another interesting thing to add about this is just that Gearbox also gobbled up Eidos Shanghai just recently. They were folded into the Gearbox umbrella as well. Eidos Shanghai is mostly a publishing arm and like an outreach kind of arm of Eidos Montreal, which absorbed some of Anoma recently, which was the rebrand of Square Enix Montreal.
Getting complex.
After Embracer gobbled them up. So I think what we're seeing here is some like pretty sizable reorg on Embracer's part, and it's not even close to the end of it. We're going to be talking about stuff like this for months and months and possibly years to come. This is just the beginning of Embracer beginning to shuffle around its pieces on the board.
Has Embracer released a good game?
Well, I don't know. I think there are plenty of. I usually the game that I think of as the best, or the studio that I think as the crown jewel in their portfolio is 4A Games, which is the Metro games. Metro Exodus is a fantastic game. Full stop.
I didn't know they make that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good. Okay, that's a good answer. That's definitely a good game.
Deep Silver owns 4A, and Embracer owns Deep Silver.
I was
believe.
like, I can't even tell you what games that they have published because they have so
I
many
think
things under their umbrella.
I think they made Destroy All Humans, I believe, or the remaster version of that. I might be wrong.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right.
Yeah, and that's a good. I mean, that's a good game too. That's what I just thought of. But yeah, I mean, I hear all about the studio, and they're definitely making moves. But I haven't seen like the critically acclaimed. Besides Metro Exodus, like you said, that's genuinely a good game. But I feel like to me, Embracer is like a all bark no bite studio where none of their games really speak to me. But I'm sure they speak to some people.
Correction rather. As of August 13th, 2020, which I guess is when they put this on the Embracer website, 4A is independently owned.
Oh.
However, they work with Deep Silver as a publishing partner for the Metro games. So Metro is a Embracer Group game, even though 4A is not one of their studios.
Got it.
Yeah. And yeah, like Tyrese is saying in the chat, Borderlands in particular, like people love Borderlands games. I love Borderlands as well.
Although
I like Borderlands.
Borderlands is a 2K game
That's true.
that Gearbox develops.
Touche, Ben. Touche.
Touche. Tales from the Borderlands is really good.
It is.
I haven't played the new one yet. I can't speak to the new one, but I solemnly believe Tales from the Borderlands is the best Telltale game ever made. Fight me on that.
Walking Dead season 1.
Overrated. But fight me on it.
I will.
We might fight about something else though, because we're gonna get a little personal here. And we're gonna rank some of our favorite gaming studios. Now, I guess we should maybe just put some guardrails up. We're not talking publishers, we're talking specific studios. So try to be as specific as possible. Don't just say, oh yeah, I like 2K, so 2K. I like Nintendo, so Nintendo. Be a little more specific than that. And then also, if somebody else has it on their list, I think it's fair to say if somebody else has the same studio you have, we can just talk about it there. We don't have to talk about it twice.
Sounds good.
Let's do it.
All right, we'll go in order of the squares. And we'll go right. We'll go from
order
left
of the
to right.
squares. That sounds very official.
The square table. All right, Alfredo, you can go first.
All right. So we're doing top 3 first. Is number 3, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so my first gaming studio that is my current top 3rd number is going to be Supermassive Games. So I was shitting on them a little bit earlier in the show, talking about how they just released their most buggy game, The Devil in Me, but asterisks on that. I'm excited for their future, and particularly seeing what they can do with this game with a new patch. So I think for me, Supermassive Games, nobody does what they do. They are one of the most unique studios in the game, and they also happen to develop the types of games that one of my favorite types of games, which are narrative-driven, choose your own adventure type games. And although, they're not clear, they're not these huge sales numbers, right? These games aren't doing huge numbers there. They speak to a very niche crowd, and I'm one of them. But I think it is important to have a developer like this that is creating these new experiences. We don't need all of these AAA games. Not everything has to be God of War or a third-person action shooter where you're just shooting things Uncharted style, right? I think there's room in the industry for these unique narrative experiences like what Supermassive Games does, and particularly in the horror genre, because whenever we think about horror games, we think, Resident Evil, either over the shoulder, third person action with zombies basically, or we're getting like a first person experience like Outlast or Alien Isolation, something like that. And I think it's a really unique combination of, okay, we're going to take a choose your own adventure, take the dream of every horror movie enthusiast, and we're going to put them in the movie and see if they can actually survive. And I just think based off all their previous games, they do it well. Like, they really do make your choices matter. This is one of the few games that your choices do actually matter, because the end result is, do you live or do you die? things don't come all the way at the end to a point where, oh, okay, nothing you actually did mattered, because at the end you're still going to get this very generic ending. No, it's like out of the 5 characters, out of 7 characters, 3 survived, some did not. There's a multitude of ways where that could happen, where you can save them or not. It's just very unique, and I think they are, one of the best in the business. Get this game polished up, hopefully, and and hopefully you can remain one of my current favorite gaming studios. But yeah, I think they're doing something super unique, and they should definitely be appreciated because of it. So they have my respect.
Can't say I love the majority of their games, but they did create one of my favorite games of all time in Until Dawn. So they'll always have a special place in my heart just due to that. I wish I could get that feeling back. I plan on playing the Quarry later this year at some point, but it's like I wish I could erase my memory. But I've heard it's not the same though. I heard it's not as good. I'm like,
I really enjoyed it. It definitely does the job. It's the closest that has come to the Until Dawn experience for sure. I think you would really like it.
I might check a Black Friday sale for it.
Yeah. Everyone should check it out. It's pretty great. It's pretty polished. Check it out. And I feel like I could have picked another narrative driven game developer, right? I could have picked something like Quantum Dream. But with Quantum Dream
Quantic Dream?
Yeah, with Quantum Dream. Okay. Yeah. I could have picked them, right? But they have a very distinct, they go for like the AMC, the bombastic movie type.
I feel like their games don't have any soul. Is that just me?
Yeah, and I completely
I know
agree. That's kind of why
it's not like it's not a tangible thing, but I don't know. I played all of their games, and I've yet to find the soul.
Right, I enjoy their games, but it's something about like the actual gameplay of it and the actual choices you make. Because a lot of their games, yeah, they do say your choices matter and stuff, but not to the degree that they really matter with supermassive games. And also, I'm a big horror fan, so I tend to go in that direction anyway, and love Supermassive for what they're doing. We don't get a lot of that, so yeah, love them. Number 3 on my list.
Respect. You know what I don't respect? I don't respect what Alfredo said about one of my favorite developers of all time. It's like he took shots before he even saw my list. This man had the audacity to call out Platinum for just keeping things churning, just keeping the doors open. They didn't want to make Babylon's Falls. They had to keep the doors open. They got to keep the money churning. They knew it wasn't good. We're gonna excuse that. Here's why I love Platinum Games. Because of all the great studios, they unquestionably have the most like mid projects. Like there's so many like trash heaps in their gameography. It's kind of crazy.
That's good.
It almost humanizes them for me.
What? You're crazy.
Because the thing is, as a Platinum fan, like I know when one of their games is gonna be bad, even before it comes out. Like I could have told you in Babylon's Fall. I wasn't excited for that game. Like that game looked horrible. But then we get Bayonetta 3, which I've heard mixed things about as far as the story goes. But I played a bit of the combat, and that game, like, it looks like a great expansion of the Bayonetta formula. They quietly have some of the greatest games of all time, like just in their gameography. To me, Nier Automata is one of the best character action games / like JRPG adjacent games I've played. Just in terms of the story it's telling, I've never seen a game really tell a story quite like Nier Automata in video games. I've seen it in anime, but to have this Evangelion type story and put it in put it in games, I thought that I really took to that. I don't think they developed Nier Replicant, but I know they were involved in some capacity with it. Because it's basically the same combat system. Astral Chain, I thought was extremely underrated. The only bad thing about that game was you couldn't jump.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why they did that specifically, but I like that game regardless. I'll never get tired of like moving your little guy around the opponent to chain them up. That was a really good mechanic for me. You look at Transformers Devastation, which to me is one of the more underrated, like small scale games of all time. I love that game. You look at Vanquish, you look at Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising, Wonderful 101, and then you see games like Korra.
I was about to say, why are you skipping all the other ones?
Yeah.
No, I'll be real. Like I wanted to name the good games. Let me name the trash games. Like Legend of Korra. I love it because I'm a pig that loves trash sometimes, and I thought that Korra, like I liked it. It still had platinum combat, so I was there.
I love
what's
that
another one?
description.
You gotta be real. And I remember going over a friend's house and playing Star Fox Zero, and my first thought was, whoever developed this game doesn't really play these games like that. And then when I looked and saw his platinum games, I was like, that makes so much sense.
Your
Like,
mind broke.
I don't know why they were even involved in this thing. This is not their lane.
I think that's my problem with them, because they are so like hit or miss, like completely.
But when
out
they
of every other
hit,
game
they
developer.
hit though. Like that's the problem. Like when they hit, they make some of the best games of all time to me.
Yeah, Platinum is definitely a strange beast, because when they hit, and when they miss, boy, do they miss.
But I don't think they ever miss
Babylon's
epically.
Fall.
Like they're not
Babylon's
making like
Fall.
No,
that was epic fail.
But that it kind of goes under the radar, if that makes sense. Like when, like let's say, remember Cyberpunk when that came out, everybody's reporting on how bad it is. You know what I'm saying? Whenever you see a game broken, it gets all these headlines. I feel like Babylon's Fall came out, and I feel like most people don't even know what that game is.
Oh, that's because
worse.
they
It's even
didn't
worse.
they
They
didn't
didn't make
even
any money
believe in
on
the
it.
product.
Right. And look, and I feel like they are a studio for hire. In a lot of cases, like they work with a bunch of different publishers, and so that's because, like, for example, they've been working with Nintendo pretty much exclusively for some of their better, like some of their more recent games, and then every now and then they'll go to Square Enix, and it just seems like they just go to, you know, I don't even know if all the games are their original ideas. I don't know how that works, but they're so unique in terms of some of the best developers, just because some of the best developers, like, they don't even subject themselves to releasing some of the trash that Platinum makes.
Let's not forget Scalebound.
We'll never know. We'll never know. I was convinced that game was going to be. I was convinced that game was going to be great. I was waiting to see reviews. Like, do I need to pick up an Xbox One? And that game being canceled was really sad for me.
But Xbox canceled it because they saw how trash it was, and were like, no.
I don't think Xbox was ready for that level of greatness yet.
Well, I don't know what to say to that. I don't know.
Hey, maybe we'll see Scalebound sometime in the future. But the only thing is about Platinum, they don't have any games that are currently announced on the docket. It seems like there's something called Project GG, but before Wikipedia, I didn't know what that is. So
it might be Scalebound, because Phil Spencer has said, like, yeah, we're totally open to redeveloping Scalebound. So
I don't know. It has been, as I'm looking, it has been over 7 years since Platinum has put anything on Xbox. So I don't know.
Overdue.
And I don't know whether they own the IP. Like, I could easily see Microsoft saying, "Oh, here's Scalebound, made by Playground Games." You know, I could easily see them moving out to a different studio as opposed to working with Platinum. Because, like you said, they are up and down, and they have a very specific relationship with Nintendo. So we'll just see. They're one of my favorites. Curse you, Alfredo, for trying to call them out.
Trash.
Sometimes, but sometimes they're great.
Yeah.
Ben, you're next. What's your third studio?
I had to kind of theme these because otherwise I was never going to be able to make a choice. So I've got like the stalwart studio. That'll be my number one. The one that I've loved forever and still love. Then I've got the one that's like a recent favorite, and then I've got one that I am most rooting for right now. So I'm going to start with the recent favorite that is From Software. It's not recent as in they've been making great games for a long time, but I am a newcomer to the Souls love As you guys know, my origin story with these games really is like playing this Demon Souls remake on PS5 and finally like breaking through the veil there and realizing, okay, I got to go back to all of these other games and check them out. You know, playing through Bloodborne and playing through all the Dark Souls trilogy over the past 2 years and playing Elden Ring this year. They're a developer that consistently delivers absolutely magical experiences. And though they have a pretty standardized core format to most of their games, I still haven't played Sekiro, by the way.
That's the
it's
best
on
game.
the
What are you
docket.
doing, Ben?
It's on the docket. Though they have a very standardized core formula, they know how to make it work, and they know how to make it relevant, and they know how to breathe new life into it, and what to tweak in order to make things feel meaningfully different. And I've had 3 experiences that are like once in a generation experiences playing these games. One was with the first time I played Bloodborne. The second one was the first time I played Demon Souls and where I finally got it. The third one was playing Elden Ring. And for a studio to be able to deliver that within the same series with the release tempo that they have, which is like pretty consistent. You know, they're not taking 7 years between games like certain other games that I had to studios that I had to leave off the list, like Bethesda Game Studios. So From Software is top of the pile right now for me, and they're only trending up. That's the thing too; they haven't missed yet.
Yeah, I feel like they have to be objectively number one in terms of like their batting average. Like they've yet to release. I mean, obviously, if you go back before Demon Souls 2009, then you're getting into their mech games and everything. But let's say post that, they have not released a bad game. And each one of their games has its own like critical following, to the point where even like I think Dark Souls 2 has gone through this thing of like it came out, people liked it, and then people didn't like it, and now people are like standing the game because like it's like this, like every single one of their games has this like cult following, and I feel like all of that just accumulated when they made their maybe not definitive best game, but definitely their biggest game.
Right.
And I think it's hard to say this has not been the year of From Software because, man, I feel like it's just deserved because they've been just putting out banger after banger, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I am what you would call a Dark Souls hater. I like their games, but I don't think they're all that, okay? They're the same game, right, guys? They're the same game.
You are on record saying that Stranger of Paradise is better than Elden Ring, right?
Oh, yeah. I stand by that one.
No. He said it's better than most Souls games. He didn't just say, he said all of the Souls games.
I mean, I'm not disputing it. These are correct statements because that's a fact. But here's the thing. While I do think that they largely play the same, every single time that they come out with something, I feel like they're one-upping themselves, like Ben is saying. Like, Elden Ring, I thought I wouldn't like it that much, but I enjoyed it. Sekiro, I absolutely loved. Dark Souls is generally okay, right? But their past 2 entries I really enjoyed, and I feel like they just keep upping the ante. And I can, although they aren't my favorite gaming studio, I respect it. And I am looking forward to their next game. I just hope to God it's not Elden Ring 2. Like, do something else, something more innovative than, making a sequel.
Yeah, we shall see. We should mention Cole had to duck out, but his second favorite studio is From Software as well. So we'll note that here.
He actually told me something different. He says number 3 was 3D Realms, who've made the acclaimed games such as Duke Nukem Forever.
I heard that too.
And they're owned by Embracer. So it all comes full circle.
Wow. I believe it.
I'm a liar. Ben is correct. His number 3 is in fact. I'm sorry. What'd you say it was?
It's from. His number 2 is from.
Oh,
number 2 is from.
Yeah.
His number 3 though. We can move on to his number 3. I guess now is Insomniac, which I assume has to be on your list. Thomas, come on.
It's there. It's
where is it?
It's fairly high, so we can talk about it now. Obviously that's my number 1.
Yeah.
I
mean,
we figured.
And it's so many layers to it, because the first game I ever remember beating is Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage. I played the hell out of this game. Like, I played this game.
Wait, that was Insomniac?
Yeah.
Yes.
Insomniac did Spyro.
What?
Yeah. So it's like, I play, like, if there's a game that I platinumed, like if there was a platinum trophy back then, it was definitely Spyro's 2 Ripto's Rage and Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon. Like, I love those games. And then I got Ratchet and Clank. And when I got a PS2 in, I think, 2004 or 5, and I got the Ratchet and Clank, I got all the games for that, and I played through all of them. Mind you, at the time, I didn't really study video game developers. I was like, games are games, and people make them, so I'm going to buy them. Like, it wasn't like I'm thinking about who the developers are. I'm just buying games. And then when PS3 came out, and I remember my stepbrother, he had gotten Resistance Fall of Man. And I saw the logo. I was like, that logo looks familiar. And that's when I learned that day that, oh my God, this studio made Spyro and Ratchet and Clank. And since then, I've just been in love. I've just been in absolute love with the studio. You can say they've missed, because they have released they've gone like really above and beyond. Like, they make VR. They made a VR title.
Yeah.
Really? What was it?
Windlands? Is that what it was? Something like that.
Was that the one where you're like Spider-Man?
I don't think so. You play as like a robot.
Oh, never mind.
I forget exactly what
Stormlands.
Stormlands.
Yes,
that's right.
I might have to play this. So yeah, they made Stormlands. They've made things like the Unspoken, Edge of Nowhere. The one that they made with GameStop. I'm trying to remember that one. GameStop published it. Song of the Deep. Played that.
Wow, that was fun.
Yeah.
Wow, they got a catalog.
I feel like they have the most impressive catalog of any modern studio, because there's so many different types of games on here. But they all, even if they're like something like, let's say, Ratchet and Clank Full Frontal Assault, that's not one of their games you want to take home to the bank. But Jesus, like, it's still a solid game, because it's still built on the same fundamentals that they've refined with Ratchet and Clank over the years. So for me, they're my number one by a wide margin. And this is all before I even mentioned that they made my favorite game of all time, which is Spider-Man.
Right.
Yeah.
That, honestly, I feel like I was always kind of like on the fence, like, are they my favorite studio? But then when they made Spider-Man in 2018, that just wrapped it up for me. I'm like, oh yeah, they're going to make sequels to this game. This is going to be like, and they're already making more Ratchet and Clank games. And I feel Ratchet and Clank, that's one of those franchises that really speaks to me from my childhood. And they're making it just as good as they were back in the day, if not better. And the fact that these games are coming out, like, their schedule's crazy. Like, if you think about like Naughty Dog, for example, Naughty Dog's a great studio, and they had consideration from me. But at the end of the day, like, Naughty Dog makes a game once every 6 years.
Right.
And obviously you can see how much attention to detail goes into those games, of course. But I'm looking at Insomniac, I'm like, I don't think the attention to detail is lacking that much from their games compared to Naughty Dog. And they're churning these games out almost on a yearly basis.
That's not true about Naughty Dog. They definitely don't have the output that Insomniac does, but
maybe 6 years is a little stretching it. But
I think 3 years actually is their release.
Yeah, that's
cadence, because it's 2013 Last of Us, 2016 Uncharted, 2019 Last of Us 2, and then
2020 Last of Us 2.
Yeah,
but they did have Lost Legacy.
They did have Lost Legacy. Yeah.
I don't know how much I want to count Lost Legacy, because like that is glorified DLC.
It was a game, yeah.
I mean, that was a game. Yeah. How dare you, Thomas?
It was 10 hours. It was.
Well, it was equivalent
The Witcher
to like Miles
DLC
Morales.
was longer than it, though. Come on.
It was equivalent to like Miles Morales compared to Spider-Man.
Yeah, I do that. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair comparison.
But as much shade as you're throwing toward Naughty Dog, I 100% agree with you.
I'm not throwing any shade towards. I love Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog is probably fourth. Naughty Dog is probably fourth on my list.
But what I'm saying is that, like, I 100% agree with you in that Insomniac is one of those in studios that, yeah, it's gonna be a good game. Whatever they come out with currently, at least, like since the last few years, right? Like you can always count on Insomniac for putting out a quality product. It's gonna be great. It's from
It's
the
gonna sell
story to the
well.
gameplay. Like, well, the gameplay is gonna be perfect. Story, might be a little not hit or miss. It's gonna be a good story, but like for game in terms of gameplay, I feel like they are like unrivaled. Like they are one of the best at what they
Another thing
do.
that I got to praise Insomniac for is that they've got pretty substantial technical prowess where
Mhm.
you very quickly after the launch of Miles Morales and the Spider-Man remaster on PS5, they were able to put out the ray tracing 60 FPS mode with very few concessions. Like so few studios are still able to like split the difference there where you get the best of the ray tracing and the best of the FPS that Insomniac was able to do
On
and
console.
exactly right on PS5. Like, I mean, there's very few other studios that have that kind of thing where you can have both, so like this is a team that has great technical prowess, but also they understand what battles to pick and what's worth making concessions for in order for a better experience on the technical level.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Let's just say it's my second, even though it's my first. Let's say it's my second. Alfredo, you've only gone once, right?
Yes. I've only
Let's
gone
see your
once.
second.
Sure. So my second game studio. Ooh, I had to really think about this. But in terms of my current favorite gaming studios, I pick Sucker Punch Productions. So Sucker Punch obviously made their
That's a
latest
good pick.
release is Ghost of Tsushima, but before that, they were responsible for the Infamous series, and then a whole bunch of games before that, like Ratchet and Clank and stuff. But recently,
You're not gonna name where they made their bed?
Well, that's the thing, because I was gonna say I have not been a huge fan of Sucker Punch. Like I didn't grow up with them, so
Okay.
I never played things like Sly Cooper. Like I never played. That was one of the only like PS2 franchises I never even touched or were exposed to.
You should play
Um,
them. Those hold up. They hold up pretty well.
I'll get to them eventually. But just in terms of what Sucker Punch like has to offer, I feel like with their latest release, Ghost of Tsushima, like that itself has put them on the map in terms of like a top tier PlayStation studio. Because I wasn't from Infamous to Ghost, I wasn't expecting such a deep story, such great mechanics, a stealth-based action game that put all the pieces so masterfully together, like from the gameplay mechanics to the characterizations to the story. Like every single part of it was masterfully done, especially considering the timeline with like consideration for the timeline period they put it in. I feel like everything that they did there was perfection. And then on top of that, they decided, oh, in addition to putting forth this beautiful game, we're going to start delving into multiplayer and seeing what we can do with games as a service. And shockingly, they did that extremely well too. Like it wasn't just a tacked on thing that they were doing. They decided to release this thing after they worked on it for a while in secret. They decided to release it for free as an addition, and it's really good. Like the raid battles to the multiplayer survival waves to the story of it as well. Like it's really put together well. But before even that, like I used to love the Infamous series. So, and those games were always technically really well done, especially their last one, which was First Light and then Second Son, I think,
First
for the
Light's super
PS4.
underrated. I
Yeah,
love that.
both
That's some of the best
great.
like additional content I play in the game.
Exactly.
It's on PS4 generation at least, but I love that game.
Yeah, great games. Like the story, you could say, of course, that the story wasn't all there, but recently, like they have just climbed up the ranks just from how much, I guess, care that they've taken with their properties and really just how much fun you can have with the game. Like behind Insomniac's games, like you can always come to Insomniac's game for, oh, lighthearted story, it's going to be a fun game. I feel like even though, Ghost of Tsushima is about like tragedy and whatever, I feel like I can always come to their studio for a good time, like just not having to worry about being stressed or anything like that. Just have a good time, solid game mechanics, a fun, good story. Like, yeah, I love them. They're great.
One of my dream games, Static Shock, developed by
Ooh.
I'm sorry, by Sucker Punch.
Static Shock is
That'd
so
be
good.
good.
I would love. Oh my god,
It'll never happen, but
it will never happen. But geez, man, if you ask me what I want for sure, like, oh my god, it'd be crazy.
yeah,
That'd be great.
Great studio.
One of the things I really love about Sucker Punch is that they are a studio that punches well above their weight class. According to Google, they have something like 160 people employed at the studio. I have it on good authority that the core development team is something like 75 people, 80 people.
Wow.
Right?
I was about to say, because there's other jobs besides developing when it comes to studios.
Let's contrast that with Naughty Dog's headcount, well in excess of 500 people. Insomniac's headcount, well in excess of 400 people, across 2 studios in different parts of the country. Right. So this is a studio that, with a fraction of the development team, can put out experiences that rival those other teams. That's incredible. Mm-hmm. That's incredible stuff from Insomniac Games, or from Sucker Punch.
Yeah, and I mean, you compare them to a studio. Who developed Days Gone again?
Bend. Sony Bend.
Man.
They're also pretty small.
Yeah, so I think they're. I don't know how small they're compared to Sucker Punch, but I mean, you think of those 2 games, Days Gone and Ghost of Tsushima. That's a tale of 2 coins right there.
right.
You know, not similar in terms of the subject matter, but I get in terms of the structure of those 2 games, like they're both open world games with a lot going on besides just open world. And one went one direction, one went the other direction, and one was a success and one was a failure. And it's like I feel bad for Bend in a lot of ways, because I think there was a lot there with Days Gone, but it's crazy how the year after you see Ghost of Tsushima come out and hits like a lot of what players really wanted to see in an open world kind of Assassin's Creed like game. But definitely nobody would say like, oh, it's an Assassin's Creed clone. Like a lot of people say Assassin's Creed is a clone of this game. Like Assassin's Creed should take a lot of what they did and apply it to their game. And that's just so impressive to me. Like I don't think anybody expected the game to be bad, but I don't think anybody expected it to be nearly as good as it ended up being.
Exactly.
So you got to give them kudos for that. We should go for Cole's. Cole's number
said
2
was from.
Yeah, who was number 3?
We already hit that one. His number 3 was Insomniac.
Okay,
so we did that one early.
Ben, did you just?
I got to do my number 2.
There we go.
So for the number 2, I will choose the studio that I am most rooting for in the future, and they are also one of my favorite studios. That's Obsidian. Obsidian put out one of my favorite games of all time, Fallout New Vegas. They've also put out some excellent games that I've really enjoyed, such as South Park Stick of Truth and Tyranny, and tons of other games. Sorry, Knights of the Old Republic 2 was the other one that I was specifically thinking of.
Underrated.
That was a fantastic game, though unfinished. And that's kind of been their story for a long time, where the talent was clearly there and the passion was clearly there, but the games were not finished by the time they were coming out. And New Vegas was sort of the same thing. The technical state of that game, I mean, it was developed in 18 months, so that tells you something about that. However, we're seeing now that Obsidian is fully owned by Microsoft. A modicum of stability has entered the picture here. They're not a for-hire studio anymore. They're a fully owned subsidiary of Microsoft. And we see The Outer Worlds, which is, I've got my criticisms for The Outer Worlds. It didn't really live up to all my expectations. However, the technical state of that game at launch far surpasses anything that they had put out in the prior.
Was that published by Microsoft?
No, that was published by a imprint of Take-Two called Private Division.
Okay. So that game came out like maybe a little bit before the acquisition, right?
It came out it came out post acquisition, but it was in development pre-acquisition.
Got it.
And now we're seeing them branch out into different things that aren't like necessarily their bread and butter, right? For a while they were doing these revivals of this classic CRPGs like Pillars of Eternity, and now we're seeing them branch back into the Bethesda-esque, or at least we assume the Bethesda-esque first-person Western role-playing game with Avowed. We'll see how that goes, but I think that could be Obsidian's real coming out story as a major player in the Western RPG space. And before that, we've seen Grounded, this game that is essentially like a live service.
Honey, I
game.
Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, but
Exactly.
is doing numbers on Game Pass. I mean, like it's
one of Game Pass
bring-
most played games. Like, it's,
yeah, exactly. It's like 10 million players or something insane like that. That nobody would have expected Obsidian, the RPG guys, to be pulling
Exactly.
that stuff in. Then now we've got Pentiment. Pentiment is reviewing extraordinarily well. It's essentially, from what I understand, it's like a point and click adventure game with a strong story element.
I played an
I will have
hour.
thoughts.
Yeah, I played an hour of
Eventually.
it. We're gonna have a conversation about it next week because
I'm gonna
I
play
played
it.
an hour of it and I had to cut it off because I'm like, oh
Really?
no, this is gonna take over my life. Because they
Oh.
said it's 20 hours too. I was like, oh,
I
God.
thought it was 10. Okay, we'll talk
I heard
about
it's
it.
20 if you really get into it. And when I was playing, I was like, oh no, this is like reading a book. This is bad for me. I need to play God of War first, then come back to this. But yeah, we gotta talk about
So
that.
what I'm seeing with Obsidian right now is a really incredible range, and I'm seeing an emerging Insomniac situation with Obsidian, where
Glad you said
they
that.
could be Microsoft's answer to Insomniac, where they've got the ability to move into all these different. They got the Western RPG on lock. They've got the the classic CRPG on lock. They've got all this other different talent that can do different things, and who knows what else they got up their sleeve. So Obsidian is the studio that I'm most rooting for, but most of all, I'm rooting for Fallout New Vegas 2. Bring it back, baby. Make it happen. Bethesda,
You'll
shake
get it one of
hands
these
with your sister studio, Obsidian, and get New Vegas 2 in development, please.
Would you mind? Because I feel like it would be cool if it was even like a scale back experience. It doesn't even have to be like the most graphically performing game ever. Like I think if it caused it to be a shorter turnaround time for it, like I would love it to be kind of like a not look like Fallout 3 per se, but even like with Fallout 4's engine. I feel like that would be to me a worthwhile experience. Because I just worry about turnaround time with them because they have so many things that they
Influx.
are actively working on that if they were to really take the time and make like Fallout New Vegas 2, like that's going to take some time. Especially with the ongoing, obviously we still have to get Avowed. We don't even have a release date for that. Outer Worlds 2 still has to come out. Grounded's like an ongoing game. Like I would want New Vegas 2 before, truth be told, like Avowed
There it
and
is.
Outer Worlds 2. Like I played through about 7 hours of New Vegas this year. And I'm like, man, why did I skip this out in this game? This game is something. And obviously the combat doesn't hold up like that, but the fact that I love it besides that, it just speaks to how excellent it is.
Yeah.
This is definitely the Insomniac of Microsoft's output. Just if you look at their gameography compared to Insomniac, it's like it tells a very similar story where it's like there's not a genre you can throw at them and they're gonna shoot out trash. They're gonna shoot out a really different type of experience. I don't know. Did they made Stick of Truth, but did they make a Fractured But Whole?
No, that was a Ubisoft internal studio.
Got it.
That
That was
made
good
that
too, but I just want to make sure. But I mean, yeah, they have a couple trash on there. I never heard of Skyforge.
Dungeon Siege 3. I played that. Wasn't good.
It's
I mean,
it's
it's
not
fine.
like they're opposed to making trash.
Similar
but
similar to Platinum, for a long time, Obsidian was a for hire studio, so they were getting work wherever they could get it. While like the for hire work they were doing was funding their RPG habit essentially.
Right. Hey, they did Alpha Protocol. Ooh.
They did.
Yeah, I saw that too. I'm like, man, that's a deep cut.
Right. Yeah. Just looking at the game's history, I didn't know that they had such a variety before you started talking and speaking about some of their games. And I am not the type of person who typically likes CRPGs, FPSs, things that Obsidian, ARPGs, like things that Obsidian has done in the past. But now they're starting to walk a little bit into my world. What I do like, they're giving me Grounded, which I typically like those types of games. They're giving Pentiment, a narrative-driven, like a visual novel-esque type experience. Like they're starting to walk into these different fields, and apparently they can do all of these things very well.
Yeah.
So
right, at a
I'm
high
excited.
level.
once they start keep going a little bit. See, maybe you can get like a narrative driven, choose your own adventure horror game.
My assumption, knowing nothing about Avowed, I know that it takes place in the Pillars of Eternity universe. So my understanding there is that they're going to take an established world and create Skyrim in it, right? So this is going to be going to be another Bethesda style game, and you could call the Outer Worlds a Bethesda style game. I think that's a pretty fair summation of that. And obviously they made Fallout New Vegas, which is also a Bethesda style Western RPG. So I think that Avowed is going to be their Skyrim kind of equivalent. And if they can land the ship there, I think that's going to be a big. I mean, that's going to be the thing for Obsidian to really put them on the map.
Great pick. Alfredo, let's hear your last one.
Sure. My last one is Naughty Dog. So you were taking shots, Thomas. I don't appreciate it. I'm my number one studio. I don't appreciate it. But yeah, I picked Naughty Dog, number one studio, and it's for very obvious reasons. Like, I think personally that Naughty Dog is the game studio to beat. I don't think anybody holds a candle to what Naughty Dog can do and has done in the past. I would say maybe like their most questionable game in the past couple years is maybe Uncharted 4, maybe. But even that is a masterpiece in and of itself, what they were able to do in terms of graphics, story, everything. They are just a masterclass studio. They put out masterful work. Yeah, you will have to wait for some of these experiences. Like, we don't get them on a super consistent basis, like every year or every 2 years or whatever. But when they do announce a game, you can be 100% sure that this isn't going to be a good game. It's not going to be a great game. It's going to be a masterpiece because that's the quality that Naughty Dog puts out every single time. So yeah, they put out some of my favorite gaming experiences every time, and I have high confidence that they won't stop anytime soon.
That's a good pick. I mean, it's a great pick.
Tyrese in the chat mentions Rockstar as kind of a rival studio. I mean, they make different types of games, but I think you can say the exact same thing about Rockstar that you can say about Naughty Dog, which is when they put out a game, it sets the standard for the rest of the games industry. This is the high bar. Try to clear it, right? And that's what Naughty Dog does every time. It's what Rockstar does every time. You can expect it. It's why they take forever on their games. It's why they require so much work. But this is a standard-setting studio in the industry. And whether you like so to me, I mean, like I could have put Naughty Dog on the list, I think, a few years ago. But I think for me, like the thing that keeps them off my list right now is that I'm not interested in where their priorities are in terms of the type of stuff that they're making. However, there's no way to possibly argue that this studio isn't firing on all cylinders and isn't at like maximum capacity for what a studio could possibly do in this industry, in the types of games that it makes. Like, who holds a candle to them? Who? You can't name you can't name the studio, right?
Right.
That makes the types of games that Naughty Dog does at the level that they make them as consistently as they do. It's just you can't.
I think the only studio you can even make an argument for, which I won't, because they have I don't know, maybe Sony Santa Monica is getting there. I mean, you can make a case that
I think there's a wide margin between them, though. Still,
I mean, based on what?
Based off of story, based off of mainly
I don't know.
story.
God of War. I don't know. God of War 1 is as like people put that among some of the best games of all time. I don't know,
and I disagree with those people.
But to Thomas's point, like, I mean, I think I would have put God of War 2018 up next to The Last of Us as impactful, incredible games. So I get what he's saying. I think that Santa Monica is flirting with being on that level, but
that's the one. I'm not trying to say they're better, but yeah,
especially with my like recent experience with God of War Ragnarok, which we've been talking about. That's like my opinion on that has soured extremely, and it's in ways that, even though I didn't care for The Last of Us 2 very much, that The Last of Us 2, was still so much of a smoother experience and a more carefully designed and considered experience than
Right.
Ragnarok is, to where I don't think that it's about like, do I like God of War better? Do I like The Last of Us 2 better? Yeah, I like God of War better in terms of the priorities of the game again, but it's not as fine of a product, right?
Right.
At the end of the day.
Yeah. I mostly agree. I mean, for me, Naughty Dog is definitely up there, probably my fourth. But I didn't take to Last of Us Part 4 like, you know, the reviews.
Part 4.
reviewers-
You've already played
4?
it? Oh my!
Yes, I
was
did.
like, what?
And part 5 gets better. It gets better. Part
Okay,
5,
all right.
and Part 6 is a really good accumulation.
Damn,
But,
they're really gonna run this series into the ground.
Right.
But no, Last of Us Part 2 is I mean, obviously it's one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time. I do not like the story of that game really that much. And to me, like, even though I thought like God of War is not one of my favorite games of all time, like the original God of War 2018, I still respect the story. Like, I don't respect the story of Last of Us Part 2. I completely fundamentally disagree with the direction they took that. So it's hard for me from that perspective to even put them anywhere near my top 3. But they're top 4.
It's interesting, yeah, because I mean, of course, you know, Last of Us Part 2 is huge, highly controversial, its story in particular. But for me, it comes down to, for me, I can see like the controversy side, but for me, it's hard to say that they, like, it's not to be respected, what the direction that they chose, I guess, and what they ultimately ended on. For me, but that's a conversation.
Yeah,
for all
we'd have
day.
to have a whole spoiler cast
Exactly.
on Last of Us Part 2. I
And
don't
I'm
want to
sure
get
we
into
will.
that, but yeah, we should.
Yeah.
We should. But
Yeah.
just to overall say, even me, considering that I don't really like the story of Last of Us Part 2, and I don't think Ben does. You don't like it as much as other people, I assume, but you don't hate it, right?
He's like, no.
We need to have this conversation.
We will, but
I want to have this
wanna-
conversation.
I do want to talk about more along the lines of, you know, Rockstar versus Naughty Dog.
Sure.
Well,
per
let's
se.
bring up Rockstar
And-
because that's Cole's number one.
Yeah. So for me, obviously, like you guys said, very different game studios. They put out very different games as well.
Right.
And that's a part of it. For me, I tend on the side, first of all, of Naughty Dog action adventure types games in the first place. So that's part of it. But
Right.
also when we talk about Naughty Dog versus Rockstar, for me, I feel like Rockstar, they, in the vein of Naughty Dog, where they put out, you know, they're always going to put out third-person action adventure type games. I feel like Rockstar does that a little bit more egregiously, where they'll put out, let's take for example, Grand Theft Auto 5. That has been out on how many different generations for how long, and they've been on that sale for years, almost a decade now on that.
Can I throw a caveat there? Because you're not wrong. But I feel like if any studio of all the ones we named has the benefit of the doubt to me to be able to do that, it's them, because they probably have the widest amount of games they've developed over the years. They have a lot of games they developed.
But also, I mean, there's another kind of caveat there, which is if
Online.
any game sold the way that Grand Theft Auto 5 has sold,
Yes.
you would continue to push that thing.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think this was the plan for them to not release anything between, let's say 2018 and 2013. But plans change when money's being made.
I think what GTA 5 just passed like 160 million units.
It's
sold
the highest
Yeah,
selling
that sounds right.
entertainment entity ever. Like it's insane. So I don't really blame them for that. But even if I did blame them, I look
170 million.
like their pace through the from 2000 to 2010 is insane. Like it's an absolutely insane pace, riddled with classic games.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to even be that upset about, like, you know, they haven't released a game in a while. Yeah, the game that they released, the two games they've released in this, you know, or last decade. Yeah, it's been a while, but in the last decade are two of the most critically acclaimed games of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is the highest selling game of all time. Like in terms of a modern context, of course you can go Super Mario Brothers, or that, or Tetris.
Pokemon.
But as one entity, one SKU for the most part, like there's really nothing that competes with Grand Theft Auto Titanfall 5. So so I feel like they're justifiably like Naughty Dog. Like you say they're number one studio of all time. You got, even though you might not agree with it, like they're maybe top 10 for me. But I respect the fact that if anybody has another number one, like it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But for me, it's in terms of like when we're talking about, current gaming studios, what they're doing. And the fact of the matter is that nobody innovates, I feel like, and does top tier stuff like Naughty Dog. In particular, like when we talk about Rockstar, yeah, it's 2 games in the past decade, right? And they are very, very great games, critically acclaimed games that everybody says. But at the end of the day, what are they doing in terms of story, in terms of gameplay mechanics? Like, are they innovating, or are they just having the same game for the past 10 years?
I mean, Red Dead's
to.
pretty acclaimed, and people rank that like among some of the best stories in the like. People really love the story. I haven't played through it. I plan on playing through it one day, but people like, especially I know spoilers for the end game of that game. Like that, no game really does what that game does in the end sections of it. Yeah. I would say Red Dead is probably the exception. I get what you're saying. Like, I'm not going to say Grand Theft Auto 5 has this robust story. And I wouldn't say the Grand Theft Auto games in general really have robust stories on the level of like an Uncharted or a Last of Us. But I'd say Red Dead Redemption is both 1 and 2 are probably the answers to when do they innovate story-wise, those 2 games.
I was watching this this British TV. I forget what it's called. It's something Games Wipe. It was like a British TV show from 2009 that was just like kind of a survey of games at the time, and it came up because I was watching a GDC talk that mentioned it. But it was really funny and like pretty like venomous against certain games, and one of the comedians on the show was saying that like GTA 4 they were talking about, because this was 2009. GTA 4 is the type of game that you get when the writers don't ever read a book; they only watch movies. It's like
well, that's Grand Theft Auto.
Well, that game in particular, I wouldn't say it has a bad story.
I like that story actually.
I like it. The thing is, it's not something I like would tell somebody. Oh, you should watch a gameplay movie. You should watch like a movie.
What I was going to say was
cutscene movie about it.
By the time they get to Red Dead 2, they've read some books, and it's like it's clear. I mean, like the Red Dead 2 is one of the best stories in any game. I think.
I'd say it's better than any Naughty Dog story besides Last of Us 1.
So I
disagree. In terms of like what I played through half of it, and I know pretty much the end, and I'm like, yeah, this is up there for me at least.
I disagree with Alfredo in that story sense. However, I do agree with Alfredo in the gameplay sense, where I feel like Rockstar really is. Their games are in desperate need of some innovation on that front, where they just do not feel right to play. They feel antiquated. They feel heavy, old, and it does not. It's not in a way like Death Stranding that serves the underlying game. It just feels off. And so I think there's like a pretty core need for some innovation there.
Yeah, and I definitely hear what you guys are saying. But when I talk about like the best game studio, I'm not thinking about just the story as being innovative, right? And they're making moves there. I'm thinking about the whole package, like everything together. And Rockstar just doesn't have for me, they don't have the whole package. Like you're saying, it might be the gameplay. It might be the story for some people. Naughty Dog has the whole package. Everything. You can always expect innovation from them. And that's what it comes down to for me.
Fair enough. We're talking about 2 of the best studios of all time, of course.
Yeah, it's
you obviously you have to start nitpicking when you're dating 2 of the best. So.
Exactly.
They're both at the top of the craft.
I think I'm the only one who hasn't gone, and this isn't my number 1. This is my number 2 because obviously Insomniac's my number 1, but my number 2 is Atlas. Atlas is low key one of the best developers of all time for me.
That's surprising.
That is surprising from you.
I mean, if you really think about the list of games that they've made, like it's insane. Like it's honestly insane of how many like critically acclaimed games they have, and also the random hit. And obviously, the crown jewel of their gamography is Persona 5. Persona 5 was their Elden Ring moment, where they released a whole bunch of games that You know, the Shin Megami Tensei games have always been critically acclaimed and nobody played them. You know, Persona 4 Golden on PlayStation Vita was the first time I feel that their games reached into a wider market. And Persona 5 was the moment where everything exploded for them, and they became listed as some of the best developers making games currently. And I mean, you think they really only make 2 series for the most part, the Shin Megami Tensei series and the Persona series, but there's so many games within those 2 series. Like, you're talking probably over 40 games.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of output, I don't think there's a studio on anybody's set, but maybe besides Insomniac, but even Insomniac, I don't think goes at the pace that they do. They've slowed down more recently, just due to the fact that I don't think they expect the Persona 5 to be as big as they are, but they're still developing like fighting games and dancing games and stuff. It's like
soccer games.
I don't know if they developed it, but Persona 5 Strikers, I don't know if that's them or no.
That was
it's not.
That's
that was
Omega
Omega Force.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure I had to check that. But the fact that they are like I can't say they're like a Naughty Dog. I can't say they're a Rockstar. Like, obviously they don't have those type of credentials in terms. They're not pushing the entire industry forward. But I do think they have forced Final Fantasy to say, we're gonna give up doing these turn-based games because we'll never be able to get them as good as how Atlas has these Persona and Shin Megami Tensei games. And we don't want any more unfavorable criticism anymore. Because you look at a game like the last turn-based Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy 13, and you compare it with something that was released relatively, nearby that release date, which was like Persona 4. And you can look at those 2 games and be like, well, one is looking like a movie almost. But then when you get to the actual combat systems and how these games are functioning, it's like, one is clearly way better than the other game in terms of everything that's involved in it, besides just the fighting and the turn-based combat. Like, Persona is a dating sim, essentially, companion sim that mixes that with the gameplay. And then you get to something like Shin Megami Tensei, where it uses those same monsters from the Persona series, because that's the parent series. Persona is the child of Shin Megami Tensei, and it goes a completely different direction. And I just love this studio. Like, whenever they released the Soul Hackers 2. Like, even though it got bad reviews, I'm gonna play that at some point, because sometimes even the trash, like, I'm a pig, I'm gonna slop it up. And
this analogy, you love it.
I do. Like, I love Atlas. I really do. I think that they're definitely one of the more underrated. I think they're definitively the best turn-based RPG maker currently out.
Yeah.
But I think part of that is a lot of studios are leaning away from that.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that they're kind of the last bastion of that. So they definitely get my respect for that.
That's a great pick. I wasn't even thinking about Atlas, to be quite honest.
They were the one I was thinking hardest on, because I was like, am I going to put Naughty Dog or them? And I was like, I'm only going to put one Sony studio on here.
Yeah, Atlas is a very solid pick. Like you said, their catalog is very impressive, and I feel like they do rely on at the end of the day they're a Persona 5 studio, and Shin Megami studio, and they are riding that until the cows come home,
as they should,
right? Because it's great, right? I obviously have a couple of issues with Persona 5, but you can't deny that it's one of the greatest RPGs of all time, and Atlas clearly knows what they're doing when it comes to RPGs. So, like, I'm right there with you. Like, if Atlas comes out with an RPG, I'm probably gonna play it.
What's funny is I think Shin Megami Tensei 5 is a better overall game than Persona 5.
Yeah, I agree.
But only one of them is gonna get the kudos.
Yeah.
And then they made a game like Catherine. I don't know if y'all played Catherine, but that game, like, that's just it's like a, I don't know how to describe that
puzzler.
Game. It's a puzzler.
So this is where I have to
Puzzler
throw
hentai?
a wet blanket over your selection here, Thomas, because
did they not do Catherine?
Atlas is a publisher.
Right.
No, but it's not the same thing like Square Enix.
The developer of Persona is P Studio, which is a internal studio within Atlas. So if you're gonna say Persona 5 Royal is the reason you're choosing it, that's P Studio. If you're gonna talk about Catherine, that's Studio Zero. If you're gonna talk about 13 Sentinels, that's a Vanillaware. So like this.
Oh yeah, I'm not including 13 Sentinels with it. I know that one they've just published.
But
So-
Shin Megami Tensei is
Shin Megami
actually
Tensei
Atlas.
and Persona is the same studio.
Shin
So-
Megami Tensei is Atlas. It's not P
Yeah.
Studio, right? So it's actually like 2 different development
It's split.
studios that we're talking about.
Really?
Huh.
Okay.
But yeah,
And we'll give it
so
to him.
which one's the favorite?
Yeah, you do have
P
to
Studio?
say.
No,
Is it going to be P Studio or
Look,
Atlas?
Wikipedia's failed me today. It is not doing that differentiation. It just says developer Atlas, so it kind of failed me there.
Well, you gotta donate. It's about that time, Thomas.
So if I had to choose one, it's Persona. It's the Persona studio. Yeah.
So P Studio.
Wherever one that is, because
Studio.
I mean, between Persona 3, 4, and 5, you're talking about 3 of my favorite RPGs ever. So it's like, yeah, and the Shin Megami Tensei games, I've had a great time with them too, and I do believe 5 is probably the best RPG that publisher, if you want to differentiate that, it's ever made. But I don't think the other Shin Megami Tensei games like hold a candle to the other Persona games.
Yeah,
But you're making me pick between children here. So
We all have a favorite child, and you picked right because, like,
agree.
between those
I
two in
think you did pick
particular, yeah, and Persona is the one with more of the complete package because it has story and gameplay, and Shin Megami it has the gameplay online, but the story is a little rough.
well, no. 5 story is kind of rough,
Yeah.
but 4 actually has a pretty good story.
Oh, is it? Okay, I never played that one.
Unfortunately, it is locked behind 3DS, so you'll probably never play it.
Oh, you mean Vita?
Doing that.
Or is it
No,
four-
Shin Megami Tensei. 4
Shin
was-
Megami Tensei 4. Okay, got it.
Yeah, Persona 4 is now pretty much on everything. Thank God.
Yeah, true.
And Shin Megami Tensei 3 is on pretty much everything too. So if you want to get some love for the series, you can always check out Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturnal, which is a great game too.
That's on what now?
It's on everything.
Oh wow, okay, noted.
Yeah, everything I can see. I've seen it on Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, PC. So have fun with that, please. And of course, Persona 5 is now officially out on Switch, so that meme can die. And it's also on Game Pass too, so you can play it for free.
Thomas, real quick, is Persona 5 better than Xenoblade 3? We got a question in the chat.
Don't do that to me. Stop. Don't do that to me.
You're the only one who's played Xenoblade 3, so
Oh man. Is Persona 5 better?
then Xenoblade 3. You gotta pick one. Which child's better?
Oh no. Xenoblade 3 is a better game overall.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Xenoblade
guys-
3 is one where it's like, even though it slogs like Persona 5, it's not like when Persona 5 went slogs, I'm like, I don't feel like playing this for months. With Xenoblade 3, every single day I'm thinking, like, should I go back? I want to go back. I just don't know if I have the time to, but I want to go back. So I probably would say Persona 5 is a little lesser, but obviously Persona 5 is a much bigger game than Xenoblade 3 is.
We'll ask you again in like a couple months after,
Oh, once we get to Game of the Year,
Recent
you'll know for
feedback.
sure. You'll know
Okay,
for sure.
okay.
I'll have
Will
it
do.
finished by then. But yeah,
I still have to do my first studio.
You don't get to go, Ben. Sorry.
Uh,
Go for it.
Go.
wait, but
Floor is
first
yours.
I have to ask because it seems like a glaring omission, right? Do you know the studio that I'm going to choose?
I thought it was.
I know you. You want me to guess
know?
it?
Yeah.
You're gonna
Oh, yeah.
choose. Yeah.
Wait, no.
Arcane.
No.
Sorry.
I was gonna say BioWare, but definitely not.
Arcane.
Nah,
You're right. It was
Yeah.
Arcane.
Makes sense.
So Arcane for me is like the perfect intersection between fidelity of experience and interactivity of experience. They don't make the most polished games. They don't make the most beautiful games. They don't make the most interactive games. But they have the perfect cross-section to where there's so much simulation at play and so much ability to just mess with it and just put your stamp on the world, right? To choose however you want to. This is the closest Ben has ever looked to Steve Jobs. That's what Matt says in the chat. they have that kind of perfect marriage of like this is not a like Dwarf Fortress kind of ASCII game that is like so interactive and I can choose to do literally anything, but it looks like a piece of shit, right? Arcane's games look excellent, but they also have incredible depth that so many games just don't have, especially games these days that are more and more expensive to make. But yeah, so like I what I really appreciate, what I really crave out of so many games is that sandbox kind of nature of these Arcane games, that where the simulation is robust enough that you can develop plans around it, and you can look at any given objective and think of 20 different ways to accomplish it, right? Because it's just that open, it's just that inviting of your own choice. IO Interactive could have been in the mix for me here too, for much the same reason with the Hitman games. But I do think that Arcane has more range here, and they have more ability to explore different types, and they have a better eye toward moving the genre of the immersive sim forward than I think IO does. IO's been making the same game. You know, Hitman 3 is the same as Hitman 1 with many tweaks, whereas Prey is so different from Dishonored. And Prey Mooncrash even is so different from Prey. And then Deathloop is so different from Dishonored or Prey. And I'm sure that Redfall is going to be different too. So yeah, I mean, the Arcane is just the tip of the spear for me. Although shout out, of course, to Cloud Chamber and Bungie, which I can't choose because of conflict of interest.
Choosing them.
I think Arcane Interactive for sure.
Arcane's a great pick. Like, I mean, look, I've only played one Arcane game to like completion, which is Deathloop, and obviously Deathloop was, I believe it was my second favorite game of last year, and I just like I had never experienced anything like that. So when you told me like, oh, I didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to, I'm like, wow, so that means like their games must be like even more like interactive than even this experience I had. And that honestly tantalized me. And so I'm going to at some point go back. I did play Mooncloud. I played a good amount of that this year. And I see why that is kind of the genesis of the Deathloop idea. And it questionably is better than Deathloop because it kind of executes the idea a little better. That's just like I'm looking forward to delving deep into their gamography because they've had some. I mean, Dishonored obviously is their cult classic. I call it. I don't know if it's their best game. You probably have better knowledge of that than me, but I've heard
their
that's
best selling. Dishonored 1 is for sure their best selling game. I'm pretty sure.
Besides, even more than Deathloop, probably.
Yeah, I don't know what Deathloop's sales numbers are like, but you have to remember that Deathloop, for its first year, was exclusive to PS5.
That's true too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that diminishes the sales numbers.
Makes sense. Any thoughts on Arcane, Alfredo?
Yeah, Arcane for me is like one of those studios that are so niche, and you're always in for a unique experience. They're so weird, which makes sense why Ben likes them. But I actually first got into Arcane's games with Dishonored as well, and I love typically stealth games, and that's what Dishonored is, right? Dishonored 1 especially. Dishonored 2 switches it up and gives you more variety, like to your play style. But I remember when playing it, I remembered how, I guess, unique in that the environments and the level design were some of the most unique and creative levels that I've ever played. And they take that a step further in Dishonored too. Like that is just hands down. Level design is crazy, insane, crazy good. But like Ben said,
for me, like some of those levels in Dishonored 2 are level design craft at its absolute peak.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, for me, they're a studio where their types of games are either hit or miss because, like Ben said, like they're a sim studio. Like you are going to live in this world, and it's gonna be like you are this person basically, and taking hold of them. And it's either hit or miss for me. For me, I don't always like those types of games. But when a Deathloop comes out, when a Dishonored comes about, like those are the types of games I like. You can always count on them for a unique experience. And for me, it just really depends on what they're going for. So like Redfall, for
Redfall's
example.
got co-op, so
Yeah,
maybe that's the
exactly.
thing that's gonna hook you.
Exactly. Redfall is one of those games that I'm like, yeah, I could be into this. Deathloop for me was I don't know if I'm gonna play this, but it's getting all these Game of the Year, so I'm gonna play it. But yeah, other things like Prey, like just didn't strike my fancy. So they always, for each of their games, they definitely every time have a unique setting, and that's what I appreciate about them. Like it's not gonna hit everyone's chords like mine, but you can always count on them. Every now and then they'll have something that might resonate with you. Or you could just be weird like Ben is and love every single one of their games.
Do you love every single Arcane game, Ben?
Well, I haven't played like like the stuff before Dishonored is a bit of a mystery to me. So I haven't played like Arx Fatalis and that kind of stuff. But everything after Dishonored is there's not a single one of those games. Although Death of the Outsider, I will say, I did not love Death of the Outsider. I only liked it. But that's a discussion for another time.
Scathing
DLC.
It's a standalone expansion. Yeah, it's like Miles Morales or what did we say before? Lost Legacy.
Yeah, Lost Legacy. Well, fair enough. I think we got some good as studios we named. I think we pretty much clear. I mean, obviously you can talk about, we wanted to avoid Nintendo because that's a whole different can of worms. Trying to differentiate that studio. Alfredo Hayden.
Nintendo sucks.
Of course, honorable mention Square Enix.
Oh yeah,
that was another one. That was when I was questioning, but I was like, I don't even know where to begin in terms of separating these studios.
Exactly. That's why I was like, let me not.
And then I'll mess around and say the studio that made Final Fantasy VII Remake, that game also made Kingdom Hearts 3. So I wanted to avoid that at all costs. So
the answer is yes for that selection.
So this has, of course, been the Dukes of Gaming podcast. I want to thank everybody for listening and watching. Again, you can listen to us on your favorite podcast service. Watch us live on Twitch and watch us later on YouTube. Hit the bell as well on YouTube to get notifications when we drop our latest videos. Leave a like, a review, a comment, anything to support the show. You can even email us at therealdukesofgaming@gmail.com. Have your question read live on air. We release everywhere, every week, so make sure you start your week right with the Dukes of Gaming podcast. Follow us, and you'll get the Duke of Dog, or we'll come up with a good Duke name for you. We'll come up with it, but you'll get his approval if you follow us. So make sure you start your week right with the Dukes of Gaming. And with all that being said, I bid thee farewell.